Hello, boys. Welcome back to Skyhold Talks. Today we'll be talking about Arms and Fury with guests Warriorsarri, Furyslouch, Delenios, and myself, Corejo.
What's up, guys?
So,
Hello.
So I'm Furyslouch. I'm a Stormforged on the Warrior Discord, and I'm a Twitch streamer at Slouch Clan.
Nice plug.
You're welcome.
I guess I should introduce myself as well. I'm Warriorsarri. I'm someone who's been AFK for like a year because I'm lazy. But I'm here as a arms specialist, and yeah, that's about it.
I'm Delenios. I currently joined Fuse not so long ago, also known as Arms One Trick. So yeah.
He also had rank 1 on KJ Mythic. Look it up.
Yeah, that's how.
Yeah, that's how I know he's good at this game. Alright, well, going to the reflections from Legion of how Warriors did from Ian and Taurus, I think Arms and Fury have both been really good. Or at least one spec has been, pretty supreme to most DPS specs in general. It just seems like, it was always flavor of the month Warrior. It just Ian, you had Arms, and Nighthold, you had Fury, and etc. Back and forth.
Yeah,
To be fair, though, I think both specs have always been good. It's just a matter of either Arms or Fury has been the best spec in the game for the patch. Like for Nightholds, most people played Fury, but Arms was still an amazing spec back then, at least numbers-wise. Playstyle-wise, it was questionable.
In Nighthold, this was like extremely underrated. Like Arms could keep up with like dot meters on almost every single fight. It wasn't like as dead as people like think it was. It's not like you brought your rate down or like you were a deadweight if you played Arms in Nighthold. You still had like very solid like boss DPS.
Yeah, it was mostly a matter of it wasn't as OP as in Emerald Nightmare, but that was questionable how good it was back then.
Yeah, for sure. I think that was kind of like the pattern we saw throughout the expansion too. Is that like one spec was generally a fair bit higher than the other. It doesn't necessarily mean the other spec was bad for that tier, but one spec was generally a fair bit ahead of the other one, and especially in Nighthold when Fury first got its hands on Convergence, and we all know kind of how that story ends.
But I think Arms to like perform well in Nighthold, you basically needed like legendaries, like for sure. If you had like nothing, you were like much better playing Fury.
Yeah, I only had the ring, unfortunately. I didn't the gloves until Gul'dan Prog ended. It was unfortunate.
Yeah, I think what helped me like being a one trick, like during Nighthold, I had like gloves and ring. So yeah.
Oh, you
I
were
had
just
like those two to back me up.
Smash it in the keyboard, do damage.
Yeah, life was easy if your first legendary was gloves, then ring, and legs. It was good times.
Yeah, I personally started playing in the middle of Nighthold, so I didn't quite get to that point. But going into some of these fights without the right legendaries, especially as either one, was definitely a little bit rough.
So you started playing right before Fury becomes shit in TOS.
Oh, I know. I'll be talking about that. Don't you worry.
Poor bastard.
I gotta say that Arms back before it was changed in was it TOS or Nighthold it was changed? Either way, it
Right
was
before TOS dropped, yeah.
Yeah, it was a very weird spec. Like Focus Rage was, if you ask me, it was an awful spec. But numbers, as long as the numbers are good, people don't give a fuck how fun or boring it is.
Focus Rage?
Yeah. You talking about Focus Rage?
Say that
The
to
best
my
ability
face.
in the game outside of Heroic Strike.
I mean, it's a poor man's Heroic Strike.
Yeah, I feel like FR was a good idea, but then being off the GCD kind of made the playstyle a bit too fast for how Arms really is. And plus, you pretty much spammed it all the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, Arms is a slow spec. I mean, it was only like 110 actions per minute.
Don't forget spamming Hamstring to be in the expansion to get more procs.
But yeah, that was 140 ppm. That was fun.
Yeah, the thing about the rework, the only thing I didn't really like about it was Titanic Might. I feel like it's more just a band-aid to the mistake of Colossus Smash being how powerful it was, right? Outside Colossus Smash, he did nothing, and then during Colossus Smash, he actually did good damage. It wasn't OP, it was just he actually did comparable damage on the DPS. It wasn't really a bonus, which is a requirement.
I actually liked Dynamite, if I'll be honest. I think the worst part of it was it forced the Rend and the Ravager playstyle.
Yeah.
If you discount those parts, it fixed the glaring hole in the arms rotation, which was the CS procs.
Yeah, it felt really nice, but I just didn't like the concept of it. It just feels like they're just throwing a band-aid on a problem that they, not going to fix until the BFA, right?
Yeah. But then again, I didn't like Legion arms whatsoever, so I guess any band-aid fix is better than no band-aid fix. Oh well.
I'm on like the opposite side, that where like I love like almost every single tier about arms this expansion, except for like ABT, because I don't know, like River Battle was just like trash playstyle. You were either like a god or garbage. Like it was so bad.
I'm the opposite. I think the current arms is the best one in Legion this far. I mean, the best arms version of Legion was the one we got the first beta build or alpha build, I don't remember which, where crits extended duration of Colossus Smash, but that got fixed like after 2 weeks. So that was no fun.
Yeah, wasn't that the old exploit the weakness?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah,
like,
it was a lot of fun. It made
It was so fucking fun.
It made Mortal Kombat actually a good talent.
Yeah, it was fun. But then they didn't like that we had 100% uptime on Colossus Smash, so they removed that, and then they gave us Titanic Might. It was odd.
Yeah, I wouldn't be the fan of that.
Oh well, we all know Blizzard knows how to design arms. It's not like they redesigned it every single patch since like MOP.
Yeah.
It's fun. I love being an arms specialist.
Well, enough about how fun ARMS was to play. How was Fury played all expansion for you, Slouch, or basically when you started?
Yeah, I started in Nighthold, so I didn't quite get the full experience, though I heard Fury wasn't super great in EN. Nighthold was a lot of fun, obviously, but I mean, your entire playstyle was pressing a trinket button, so kind of depends on your definition of fun. But the low point of Fury for me absolutely had to be Tuma Sargeras. Like the tier set in general was not good. The tier in general just didn't play well for Fury. There was like one fight that Fury did well on compared to ARMS. I'm sure there's a fair amount of Fury players out there who remember doing Fallen Avatar progress, and that was probably the worst thing they've ever done in their life because there was no way to hold Juggernaut stack, so your execute damage just sucked. I think that tier in particular really brought a lot of the problems with Fury kind of to the forefront, and I think that is really kind of what helped shape Fury for BFA 2, and then we'll get to that in a bit. But I'm really glad with kind of what's come out of that tier and what we've kind of learned from that and what's changed because of it. And then we got to Antorus, and Antorus was a whole lot of fun. Again, we had like the really specific build with the Soul of the Battle Lord, Bloodbath talent, and it created this really bursty execute focused build that ended up just doing like stupid amounts of damage after 20%. But I really enjoyed that kind of play style, and I think it made the execute phase a lot of fun to do when you just see your numbers skyrocket right at the end of the fight. But I'm really glad with how it played at the end, but I'm more excited for how it's going to play in BFA.
Yeah, it's kind of odd because you like the big burst of damage at the end, but like correct me if I'm wrong on like numbers, but I think your last battle cry on most fights were about like 10% of your like overall damage of a fight, and I just like hated that shit.
Yeah, that's the reason I didn't play Fury, because Juggernaut just totally turned me off. Drop your stats, you no damage.
Yeah, that was kind of the drawback to it too, is that if you pull it off right and you get it perfect, then you end up with some pretty ridiculous numbers. But if you don't, you drop Juggernaut stacks or something happens or you mistime your last battle cry. I mean, that alone just messes up your damage in insane amounts. That's about 10+% of your damage right there.
Yeah, but that's just classic Warrior.
You go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that's classic Warrior. When has Warrior ever not been do what you can during execute? You can AFK the rest of the fight.
very beginning at EN where you didn't press it.
Oh yeah, I still prefer, the old high maul arms where execute was 80% of your damage.
Yep.
I miss those days. Anyhow, should we move on from Legion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just
Legion's dead.
quickly.
Kill it.
It's done. It's over.
Yeah,
We're done,
finally.
boys.
Just quickly, rate. How did you? How did you just quickly rate Arms and Fury for Legion out of 10 compared to previous expansions? I mean, I would put Arms at 6 out of 10, simply due to it being a good spec. It wasn't great. It wasn't awful. It worked, and we had 2 or 3 viable specs which you could play.
I kind of like the new arms. It's very slow and execute has lots of downtime. But I feel like to make the specs smooth right now, you need Azeroth traits, especially the slam one. So I'm not sure how I feel about that.
To be fair about the BFA arms, it has no downtime if you play correctly, but
we all know about that.
Yeah, that's nuisance. I'll talk about it a little later.
Yeah, but I think the best part of Legion being dead forever is that legendaries are pretty much gone, right? That's the best part. It just feels like some of the legendaries are way too strong than the others, yet some are useless. Your Stride or your Timeless Stratagem, they were kind of just there for memes and not actually used for any class, except what they could use Agrimars.
Yeah, Agrimars was best for a while for Arms, just saying.
Yeah. Because Arms had no really good second DPS legendary for a little bit.
Yeah, and that was before people realized that the head was good.
Yeah.
But, before we realized that you can actually use Ravager, and we used OPS instead.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a minor thing. But I agree. Legendaries have been odd. I mean, now that we have all the legendaries, it's fine because we can switch whenever we want. But the first few tiers, it was just if you were unlucky, you were benched, no questions asked.
Oh, yeah.
And
I don't think the problem was necessarily with the legendaries themselves, because the legendaries themselves did add, some layers of fun gameplay, but it was the acquiring of the legendaries, especially at the start, that just really blew. And I'm sure a lot of people remember getting a Safuz or a Pride as at the start of the expansion, and they're like, okay, well now what do I do?
Reroll.
Yeah, basically, what other option do I have? It's gonna take me another 3 weeks to get another one, right? So.
Yeah. Seffi was my second. I didn't want to do it anymore. I was like, wow, actually gonna delete this character.
Start fresh. Let's go again.
What do you say? Move away from Legion?
Yeah, totally done.
Who want to start for the BFA talk?
I mean, first thing, tier sets are gone.
Yay.
And one thing that tier sets made for Arms, I'm not sure about other specs, but every single tier, because of tier bonuses, we change specs. If you just forget Trial of Valor and EN, we basically played FR in Nighthold, then we played Rand in TOS, and we played FOB in ABT. And there's one thing that I'm a bit scared that we're gonna play the same spec through all of BFA because we have no tier. And Azeroth traits right now don't really affect your talents whatsoever. So
yeah, they have to introduce new ones to make to add some flavor to it, because they had the same ones all X-Pack. They're just gonna buff nerfs the existing ones. They're just be constantly switching all the time and probably playing the same build as you just said, right? Because none of them actually influence our abilities in a whole lot of ways. More just baseline abilities that are being altered.
I mean, there's a second option to make us switch specs more often. Make all our talents useless. That's the current way that Arms works. Most of our talents do nothing in BFA.
Yeah, I feel they're just kind of there.
Yeah, I mean, besides ag management, nothing really matters. But yeah, it's weird. In principle, I like tier sets because they give you something to work towards. But the simple fact is you get 4-set if you're in a top guild week 1, unless you're unlucky, in which case you get it week 2. If you're in a lower guild which doesn't do split runs, etc., you'll get your 4-set in a few weeks at most, which kind of neglects the entire collect and improve your character part of the tier set.
Yeah.
Well, even if you do splits runs, you cannot trade those like specific armor pieces, so you can still get screwed pretty hard.
Yeah, that's the upside or downside of Azerite gear. You can't trade them, which is odd, but that's hard to argue against because they're dead set on it. But the only upside I can see is for not being able to trade the Azerite pieces is you will constantly have that goal to try and get the piece you need, but it being completely random and personal loots and untradeable, you'll always have someone getting fucked, never getting the piece they want. But, that's one of the ways you can neglect that is you have, 4 or 5 pieces with Azerite bonuses? I don't remember.
It's 3. Helm, shoulder, chest.
Yeah, so you will always have some sort of Azerite bonus working. You might not get the perfect one, but you'll always have a good one most of the time, at least.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like just compared to just what we've seen so far of the Azerite system, I feel really underwhelmed by it. It doesn't seem very exciting in any particular way. A lot of the traits got buffed last night, which is really cool, and they got buffed to some pretty respectable numbers. So it does make them a little bit more intriguing, but the traits themselves don't really stand out to me in any way, at least for Fury, because you got things like, your Bloodthirst has a higher chance to crit every second. So it's like, okay, well, it's like free damage without me really needing to think about it. It's not anything. It's not like I'm putting in a meaningful choice. It doesn't feel as impactful as slapping on a 4-piece and it suddenly gives me a big boost of damage. It doesn't seem to have that same power impact that were left behind by legendaries and tier sets.
Yeah, tier sets alter the whole playstyle sometimes, and legendaries did in a certain way, but then Azerites are just kind of there.
To be fair though, to the Azerite bonuses, this is just the first tier.
Yeah, exactly.
Generally, the first tier bonus of the expansion is just 5% extra mortal strike damage or 2% extra crit on deep wounds or something useless, which is kind of how the Azerite bonuses are.
You might add some more traits in the future after tier, just like the legendary. They just added a part of it.
Exactly.
Maybe we can get some fancy traits, but right now they're just hey, there's some damage. There you go. Nothing special.
Yeah, and seeing as it's a new system, I kind of prefer it being boring but useful rather than flashy and odd, to use a word. I have no better word. To compare it to most of the legendaries. Most of the legendaries were interesting, but they were completely useless. Whereas
might create problems.
Currently, go ahead.
If they make some traits that really stand out or make your gameplay more fun or affect your rotation, they might be almost required for your spec, if they're that good. So
you have to look another tier 20 for arms, right? You're basically
kind of like that double-edged sword. Yeah, it really it dictates your playstyle. It doesn't give you the choice; it dictates it.
If you look at traits right now, absolutely none of them does anything special, at all.
Well, define special. If we use executioner precision, for example, it will make the execute rotation for arms completely different compared to if you don't have the trait. For example, the execute rotation without the trait is just spam execute every global non-stop and then throw in an overpower now and then, ignore Maul Strike. Whereas if you have executioner's precision, Maul Strike once again becomes useful, sub 35%. So the traits doesn't
big traits, but I feel something like executioner's precision affects your rotation a bit, and it's one of the only traits that kind of does that. And I also feel this should be baseline instead of changing your rotation because you have this trait.
Oh yeah, that's true. It should be a baseline, but it does change something, so that's a bonus. I mean, without its execute for arms, it's boring as hell.
Yeah. Enough about talking about traits. We should probably move on to the usefulness of warriors coming to BFA. We did lose Shockwave, which kind of sucks, but I'm fine with that because I never took in the first place in Mythic Plus. Got the double charge, need that damage, dude.
Selfish.
Exactly, dude. I didn't push keys. I want to do damage.
Yeah, my job is to do damage. The rest of the CC.
I'm not here to CC. Who do you think I am, a tank?
I mean, really, I think that's really what we can expect of warriors in BFA is that their usefulness is still really about the same, right? You're not bringing a warrior for their utility. You're bringing a warrior because they do the big damages, right? That's what it is. And I mean, now we got Battle Shout now, which is great. It's a pretty good raid buff. We still bring Rally and Cry, which is pretty dang good. I don't think the loss of Shockwave is going to be as big a deal as people might make it out to seem, especially within Mythic Plus, because a lot of mobs just can't be stunned anymore. And having an AoE stun like that in your group really feels like a luxury rather than mandatory. So I don't think the loss of Shockwave is going to be that bad. Plus, we do keep Stormbolt, so I mean, a single target stun still ain't that bad.
Yeah, we still have AoE fear if we absolutely need an AoE disturbance.
Like Shockwave only became somewhat OP if you needed to use it about like every 20-ish seconds, like for small adds that you could stun. Because using Shockwave most of the time, you would just like DR something like the kick from a monk or like a cap from a shaman and just DR it. Just yikes.
Yeah, if you're like big pulls over and over, like Shockwaves would be big OP, right? Because you're just instant stun, 3 seconds.
It's still like an AoE interrupt, even if it's like half a second stun, like that's full DR. Still pretty good.
Yeah, but seeing the first MDI, seeing a lot of people pull double warrior was really good because it saves one person fucks up his Shockwave for the first pack. We still got a second one. It's still a really short cooldown, right? You got a lot of stun duration that is just basically free, and it's up all the time for every single pack.
And there's also the fact that most AoE stuns have been removed, not just Shockwave. So the fact that we no longer have it isn't as impactful because you can't stack 5 AoE stuns per group anymore. Yeah, unless you have some really weird setup.
It's just Warlocks and monks that have Windwalker. I think it's Windwalker monks that have a baseline now, and the rest are talented or
correct baseline.
Yeah.
I mean, Shockwave is still a prot baseline.
Yeah. I'm just talking about from pure DPS wise.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, monks got their sweeping legs for a baseline. I think they had Ring of Peace put in baseline too, didn't they? Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, monks have a lot of utility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Speaking of Readying Cry and warrior utility, like, how do you guys feel about Readying Cry being like used by prot warriors? Because I feel like most of the time you could bring a warrior just because like you needed shot or like a big AoE or something. What if warrior is not too bad and you just like bench because the prot warrior can use it?
I mean, I would rate Rallying Cry as one of the best defensive cooldowns in the game. That might be because I'm warrior biased, but I really do think that the effective health increase from Rallying Cry is really useful. So I don't see a downside of using multiple warriors because why would there be a downside of having multiple raid cooldowns?
Yeah, it's true. They don't stack, but you can keep the duration going for a very long time, right?
Yeah, and how many DPS specs have a raid cooldown? There's also that part.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Because not a lot of DPS specs have a raid cooldown. Sure, it sucks being the GCD now, but it's not the biggest deal in the world anymore.
Yeah. I mean, if you have to spend a GCD to save the raid or a GCD doing, I don't know, not saving the raid, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's a really clutch ability too, right? Like you know the big damage is coming out and you rally. It's quite incredible how much it helps the entire raid team. Just the one cooldown, especially in big day. Like I mean, like if you look at Darkness of 1,000 Souls on KJ, right? I mean, I'm sure everybody shouted at that moment, and it was a huge help. Right? It's a massive help to all of your healers. So it's a super powerful cooldown.
Yeah, and if we remember back to MOP, when every single class had 15 raid cooldowns and you just rotated them constantly, warriors still were brought even when everyone had raid cooldowns because Rallying Cry was a really good raid cooldown. But nowadays, when warriors are one of the few DPS classes which has a raid cooldown, you can almost guarantee a raid spot as long as you're good on any fight which has burst AoE damage.
What if they just remove shout from warriors? Do you think they will keep us just because of execute damage?
Shout, do you mean rallying cry or battle shout?
Yeah, I mean, rallying cry,
Rally,
my
yeah.
bad.
Same thing.
It's not commanding shout anymore. Come on.
Yeah, it's same as recklessness. Have to remember how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. I mean, if we remove rally from warriors, the only thing they really got going for them is damage, right? And they're generally pretty good. And their execute's generally pretty good, but BFA's execute is kind of lacking compared to how Legion's was, right, for both specs. So now you got like underwhelming execute compared to how it used to be. They're not like mega OP.
I mean, we still have David Sword, so we can still clutch tank if required, which is useful sometimes. I mean, it's not always good, but
Yeah.
it's still useful. It's seldom used, but and purely looking for a raid spot currently on numbers is nigh impossible because tuning is not done yet.
Yeah.
I mean, arms currently looks really good numerically, but we all know that tuning is done after the heroic week.
Yeah, we're gonna see a bunch of tuning probably.
Yeah.
But
Arms will get dunked. No one will play it. The end. Nothing new.
But I feel like Arms' toolkit for like AoE and single target is pretty versatile, right? Especially that 75 row. You got the Warbreaker for the burst. You got the collateral damage for 2-target cleave. And then you got cleave for the 3-target consistency, right? That's just AoE. You got like every situation right there. Then you got, heavy execute phases with Massacre. You got, War Machine for Tatads dying. I feel like Arms has a lot of ways to deal with a lot of fights.
It's also like probably the best spec for 2-target cleave. Like let's say like Tarrant in HFC. Like an ad like coming out about like every minute or so. And if you can just like nuke it down and cleave executes, it's so good.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Sweeping Strikes is odd with it being on a global and it being worse than Blade Flurry, which is just better in every single way. But I agree, Arms on 2 targets, Arms is nigh unbeatable. But I have to disagree with the AoE talents.
Okay.
I mean, we can either have burst AoE with Warbreaker, but if we use Warbreaker, we have almost no sustain AoE. I mean, we can spam Whirlwind, but Whirlwind does no damage.
Yeah.
But if we take Cleave instead, we lose 30% on burst AoE, which I guess that's fine if burst AoE isn't as needed, and we take Cleave instead. But Deep Wounds and our mastery is, to be polite, useless. So sure, we can have decent sustain AoE with Cleave, or we can have good burst AoE with Warbreaker.
Yeah. I mean, it entirely depends on the fight, right? But we do have to trade something off. We can't have everything. We can't have TOS again, where Arms has literally everything it has, right?
Yeah.
I just feel like right now Warbreaker is a bit overrated because okay, sure, you're like buffing your Blade Storm and like whatever damage for like this 10 seconds by 30%, but cleave damage by itself is pretty solid and it's more deep wounds. So even if the pack maybe lives like 15-20 seconds, I still feel like cleave will be better than like Warbreaker.
Yeah, I agree. As long as burst AoE isn't everything that's needed, cleave is going to be the better
is just
talent.
Too good.
Yeah, or at least baseline deep wound is good. Let's not talk about how it scales.
Yeah, just how it scales. It's terrible.
I mean, when the worst what the fuck is called? Mastery. Trait, Bristol, what's the word for it? Secondary stat that we had. When the worst secondary stat to increase deep wounds damage is mastery, mastery is bad.
Yeah.
I mean, haste, even though deep wound doesn't scale with haste, increases your deep wound more than mastery does, simply because you use your spells more often.
Yeah, the problem is like that deep wound scaling better with haste and crit than actual mastery. That stat itself seems like a bit of a problem. Yeah,
mastery is useless. I mean, last time I checked our stat base, mastery was like 0.2, where crit and haste were like 2.2.
Yeah, my Yeah, my mastery is like at 0.38, and that's just because I literally have like 34 mastery total, and that's in the Colossus Smash legs. Like I have like the minimum required.
Yeah, and mastery is still like 15 to 20% of that or damage.
Oh yeah.
They really do need to rework deep wounds.
Yeah. I think
But,
like it works mechanically fine. It just needs to do something other. The mastery stat needs to do something other than just increase its damage.
yeah.
I mean, the problem is like verse makes like all your damage better.
Yeah.
Ace is just like, I mean, lower GCD, blah blah, like whatever. Like Ace is just like a good stat, and crit. Deep wounds can also crit, and it's also like your main stat, like for all your damage, because we don't have like battle cry anymore.
Yeah.
So every single stat, like point by point, is better than mastery. So
Yeah. You increase
they
all your
have to do
damage by
something.
1%, and then or you can increase 30% of your damage by 1%. It just feels just kind of weird, you know, right?
Yeah.
Like my idea was to like include opportunity strike with mastery, but that'd be maybe too OP, just like to make the execute phase smoother. But like Archie said, it's like supposed to be a slow spec, so giving like opportunity strike back to warriors might make it like GCD capped, which is not like their idea of arms.
It's GCD capped now, so I don't really know what that's about. I mean, we
You
have
some downtime sometimes, but rarely.
well, if we are to trust Simcraft, then we know Simcraft sometimes is odd.
It's
And
just like fervor.
to be fair, that's
like sit
perfectly
in melee range and don't charge.
Yeah, and with
you're gonna have
perfect or
downtime.
charged usage.
But if you replace all these like empty GCDs with charge, you're basically GCD capped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're always saying something, right? I mean, in pre-patch, I mean, it feels okay, right? Because you do have
With
gloves,
gloves.
which, yeah, gloves smooth the rotation like immensely, right? And I guess Hero Cleave using as a G, using for Colossus Smash is all right. Doesn't really actually fill any gaps, but the gloves just do worlds of wonders. Basically, it makes you use Moral Strike and Execute, which is kind of nice, I guess.
Yeah. What do you say? Should we consider talking about the second spec, which Warriors have?
Oh yeah.
Hey, I'm still here, guys.
You mean
How
Prague?
you
Let's
doing,
bring
buddy?
Marek in.
Doing good. So yeah, I think really what to talk about in Fury is really what you guys talked about. Arms is that Arms just has that versatility through their talent trees, and Fury doesn't really feel like it has that. So like Fury's entire design philosophy feels like it's just been changed completely. Fury doesn't really feel like it's this super like high bursty class that does insane amounts of damage during its cooldowns and then basically nothing between its cooldowns. It feels like it's more of a sustained DPS class now, which is okay. I mean, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But my biggest problem, I think, right now lies in Fury's burst AoE capabilities, especially compared to Legion. Because in Legion, you just whirlwind, battle cried, rampage, Odin's Fury, and then hey, look, like 12 million DPS. But if you want to do your highest potential burst damage in BFA, it's so much more convoluted and so much more complicated, where you have to pool rage to near maximum, then you whirlwind, recklessness, siege breaker, rampage, and then blade storm. So
that doesn't fit in enrage anyway.
Yeah. So like it's messy and it doesn't work, and that's almost like 8 to 9 GCDs just to do your maximum burst, and it still doesn't work that great. So I really hope that something can be done with that, because I mean, if you compare that to Arms, where in its simplest form, Arms can charge Warbreaker, Blade Storm, you're done, right? It's that simple.
How do you
right?
feel about like Fury's AoE on like, let's say 4 or 5 target with the new meat cleaver?
So I think that was a really good change, and I'm having a lot of fun with it too, because now Whirlwind lets all of your single target abilities cleave, and I think it's a lot more fun doing sustained AoE fights. But when you really need the burst, it's not there. But the sustained AoE fights are a lot of fun to play now, because it doesn't devolve into a 2-button rotation where you're spamming Whirlwind, Bloodthirst, Whirlwind, Bloodthirst, Whirlwind, Rampage. And it's great too now, because Whirlwind also generates Rage. So it doesn't feel like you're wasting a lot of globals not accomplishing anything, but you just don't have a choice but to press it. It feels like pressing Whirlwind, even in just mass AoE situation, feels good, because it's still generating Rage. And getting to that rampage faster is really what you need, because Fury had a really hard time getting enraged in high AoE situations in Legion, because he didn't really have a way to get enraged. You would use BT up to 4 or up to 5-6 targets, but you had no way to buff BT because Furyslouch wasn't in the rotation. You're barely generating any rage because you're only using Bloodthirst, and that's the only thing you use that generates rage. So you don't rampage very often. So it felt like you just slowed yourself down a lot in moments where you should be doing a lot more damage. But obviously that's been addressed in BFA now with everything being cleavable. It makes the rotation feel a lot more smooth, and it's a lot more fun to play.
Yeah, the rotation feels smooth, but if you compare Arms and Fury before like any tuning is done, like as it is, do you think Fury has like the upper hand on Arms in any situation?
No, I don't think Fury's better at anything right now compared to Arm. And again, I mean, obviously tuning plays a huge part in that, and we have a lot to see. But I think we'll see Fury get better as more stats come. And I think we're going to be talking about this a little bit later, but like Fury, once it hits 120, it does slow down a lot, and it feels a lot weaker. And I think that's kind of a typical thing for Fury, is just how stupidly stat reliant it is. So although it doesn't have maybe the best toolkit right now, I think the better stats will eventually prop it up.
I think one of upside that Fury has is that all of its AoE is just passive. Like, unless you spec into Wild Slash, whatever it's called, you just use Whirlwind rotationally. So as soon as secondary targets spawn, you don't change anything. You just do extra damage for free, basically. Whereas for Arms, you have to... Well, you don't have to do much. You just pop sweeping strikes if there's 2 targets. But you still have to plan.
Yeah. You have to actively change your rotation for Arms compared to Fury, because it works differently for AoE, right? You can't just keep hitting slam on one target. Multiple targets and be fine with it.
Yeah, you have to more plan ahead.
Yeah.
Like, if you know ads are spawning, you can't use Bladestorm, for example, on a single target. Whereas for Fury, you just pop your cooldowns, you have Recklessness up anyhow for the ads, most likely. And to be fair, Recklessness, it's just extra rage. So sure, you don't always need it to do the burst damage, as long as you plan ahead slightly with your rage.
Yeah, it's not the damage cooldown that it was in Legion by any means. It's almost like just an entirely different thing now. And I mean, obviously, you're still going to be doing more damage during Recklessness than out because you're generating rage so fast. But it's not as bursty and then low valley as it was in Legion. You still kind of sustain the same amount of DPS. So I actually kind of enjoy Recklessness a lot more than I enjoyed Battlecry. I think it just makes the rotation feel really fun to play. And yeah, it just smooths out the damage too. It's not about the burst with Fury anymore. It's just about smoothing out damage.
I have to be honest, I'm probably gonna play both specs in BFA if Fury is better on some encounters, just because like the gameplay is so much smoother, and I just totally edit Furyslouch and like all the downtime and like the bad damage like between battle cries.
Oh yeah.
You were just hitting like a wet noodle. It's like just abysmal.
Yeah, ours was you wait for Colossus Magic to come up to do damage for resets. Fury was wait till Battlecry comes up to do damage. And it just felt like, although Fury's Battlecry damage was bonkers compared to Arms, but
I see somebody saying give Odin's Fury back, and that's something I've been saying since I first saw the beta. And it's not because I guess in a lore sense, keeping Odin's Fury doesn't quite make sense, but I think Fury really needs a tool like Odin's Fury that really enables that burst AoE toolkit, because it's not, as a couple of people saying, it's not necessarily about the numbers, it's about the toolkit. Is that Fury has a hard time doing exactly what Arms does, but it takes them significantly more time to accomplish the same thing, and it doesn't even do as much damage.
Yeah, but then you have to ask, does every spec need everything? They've moved towards specializing the specs. Like Arms is very much a 2-target or single target spec with burst AoE, whereas Fury seems to be more aimed towards a fast-paced single target spec with passive cleave. So, do we really want Fury to have the same toolkit that Arms have, especially now that you can switch between the two very easily?
Yeah,
that's a fair point. Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah.
If every spec did everything equally, I think there'd be no fun, right?
Yeah, like everyone would just use 2 Windwalker monks on every Mythic Plus group as they did in Legion.
They just pick the best offensives and just go.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm fine with Fury not having burst AoE to the same extent that Arms have. simply due to the fact that Fury has other things that's supposed to make them useful in other areas. Sure, Fury currently numerically is useless compared to ARMS, but that's just tuning, and we're still in beta.
We still got more to come. So
yeah. We still have 5 weeks until raid starts. So I should ignore numbers as it currently stands and mainly focus on how it feels to play. And to be fair, I think both specs feel good to play.
agreed,
To an extent.
Yeah.
I mean, Fury is a fast-paced spec. It's not the most in-depth spec. You just press things on cooldown and rampage and then repeat. Whereas ARMS, press whatever lights up. And if you don't have anything light up, don't press anything.
Yeah.
It's not the most brain-intensive spec, ARMS, to put it politely.
Right. You hit everything on cooldown, and you do a little bit of rage management, but even that's not huge because you still have Skull Splitter and Bladestorm that kind of like fill the gaps of having no rage. Although Bladestorm's using cooldowns, but you get the idea.
Yeah, and if you can charge, you just ignore rage and press whatever you can press.
Yeah, you just press whatever you want.
Yeah, I think Fury right now too is especially forgiving. Because of the legendary system too, with helm and legs being used at the time, we have people having 98+% uptime on some bosses on Enrage, which is actually ridiculous because they're aiming for about 60% at 120, so it's quite a big drop off. But because of that, it's basically impossible to make a mistake as Fury right now unless you're just never rampaging, I guess. But like right now, your enrage is up all the time that you really can't mess it up, right? You're basically always doing things in enrage. I think at 120 it might be a little bit more tricky, whereas you need to make sure you're doing things in enrage and not outside of enrage. But again, not super complicated. It's not going to take a big brain to play Fury at 120.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to take into account that you have head and legs currently, so
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, there is a way you can fuck up playing Fury, and you just not hit Whirlwind, like some people, right?
Yikes. That's toxic, dude.
No, it's not.
Yeah, and something that we have to also remember that this is fresh at 120, that we have a decently slow ARMS and a decently slow Fury. Warriors have always historically been a well-scaling class, to put it politely. So we can most likely look forward to a GCD-locked ARMS and a very fast-paced Fury at the end of the expansion, unless something weird happens. Yeah. To be fair, though, they have reduced the amount of secondary stats we'll have in BFA by removing it from free items. But
Fury's historically been...
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
No, so Fury's always been this historically scaling higher spec, though, right? Because I remember back in, MOP, it used stat crit, right? And then you just got a bunch of crit, and you just keep up enrage a little time and hit really hard during Colossus Smash. ARMS 52.4%. Yeah, there you go. But I feel like ARMS really had nothing to scale off of. There was no like break point. You just did more damage, and that's really it. And it just didn't scale well. ARMS never really scaled well, I don't think, right? He always did good early on, and then Fury caught up by the second or the end of the first tier.
We scale with
depends.
Damage,
yeah, it depends.
Mastery executes. Sometimes it was OP.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, I haven't been raiding for very long. I always started in MOP, so I can't tell you in Dragon Soul or stuff like that. It's a total casual.
Oh, I've always been ARMS, so ARMS have historically either not scaled at all or had an OP mastery.
Fair enough.
Now we have a mastery which is useless. So I think
no scaling, boys.
Yeah, flip around on you guys there.
We have really good strength. That's the upside. Strength doesn't scale well into the late expansion. So we'll have to see how it appears numerically at the end. But to be fair, we're not there yet. So ARMS looks good now, so I'm happy, numerically at least.
Yeah, for sure. I think as Fury goes along, because it's looking like it's. I mean, anything can change, of course, but it's looking like it's going to be a very haste crit heavy design for it to build. So obviously, as we just keep getting better gear as we go through the raids, I think Fury is really gonna pick up steam as we keep going through the expansion. But again, number tuning still coming through. Azurite pieces might make very different gameplay choices. I still feel like it's just too early to say. But I do think that Fury will eventually catch up and be good.
30% ace then mastery, right?
Yeah, give me that 30% haste cap, bro.
And
what do you say?
I don't know. I don't think arms is gonna scale well at all. What are we gonna scale?
No,
strength.
We currently scale extremely well with strength, and then decently well with the crit and haste, simply due to the fact that we want the extra rage that those two stats give. But as soon as you have enough rage to sustain a good rotation, we will not scale well, as things stands right now. But it's still better, tuning change, etc., etc. So as things stands right now, arms doesn't scale that well. But, things change. Well, what do you say? Should we look at something else than tuning? Let's say, should we look at talents, for example? How the two different specs have, which talent builds we have for the different specs, if we have any different builds for different fights, etc. I can look at arms first and just say arms doesn't really have that many options.
No.
Beside the AoE tier, level 75, we can use Warbreaker for burst, we can use Cleave for sustain, but generally we have one cookie cutter build, which is basically just Skull Splitter, Double Time, Massacre, Aim for the Kill, and Angle Management. Those are required for almost every single fight.
Yeah. I feel like
the only role we're gonna change is basically like the 75 one. That's like collateral damage, Warbreaker, Cleave. Because everything else is like super cookie cutter. And something like Deadly Calm is just garbage.
No, we don't really need. We're not that rage starved to require Deadly Calm, right?
Oh.
I feel like we've never been that rage starved in a very long time, and it's just 6 seconds of free rage is whoop-de-doo, right?
Yeah, and it also doesn't line up with anything. It's 1 minute cooldown.
Yeah, on a cooldown.
So it doesn't. CS is 45 seconds, so it doesn't line up. It lines up with Ravager, but why would you use Ravager?
Yeah, why use Ravager when Blaze Storm exists, right?
Yeah.
Same thing.
You can sometimes use War Machine if the fight is designed well, so you can get a lot of killing blows, or at least
you don't have to get killing blows. Just have to die.
Last second.
The best example for War Machine is something like Portal Keeper, where you're just like spamming Whirlwind, and all the ads dying super quick just funnels you like infinite rage.
Yeah, Scorpion would be a good fight too, right? You can go back and get the Nighthold, just constantly killing ads, just full rage bar.
Yeah, you basically need. I think it's 2 kills per cooldown of Skull Splitter. So depending on your haste, that's 2 kills per 15 to 20 seconds. Just to get the same amount of rage. Then you still have to take it into account the Skull Splitter deals damage, whereas War Machine doesn't.
Passive.
Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly how the numbers work out, as I haven't seen it out, but generally Skull Splitter is just really good.
Yeah, it replaces a slam too, right? So you're using less slams and just generally have more rage. War Machine is kind of there.
And it hits for a ton.
Yeah, like 84% attack power is pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's like 80% of Immortal Strike in damage-wise. And it generates rage. So it's a really good talent.
Yeah.
At least numerically.
Yeah, I felt really underwhelmed after Sudden Death's nerf. A couple months ago, I think it was now. It was like 2.5, now it's 1.69.
Exactly. Especially as you go for the rage execute for arms, which hits for a lot, combined with the fact that you get 33% of the rage back, I think it is, if it doesn't kill the target. So not only did you get a free execute, you generated rage by using it, which is decent.
And I feel like if you hit the 45 row, Fervor Battle just seems kind of underwhelming since Trauma's gone, right? Because you're kind of just hitting Whirlwind, and you just 10% more damage. You also do a slam. sure it's like decent DPR wise, but you're gonna be so rage starved. You're like
Exactly.
Moral Strike, Whirlwind, and then you're gonna sit there for like 20 seconds.
Whirlwind overall is just like very like underwhelming.
Oh, it does like no
Like
damage.
nothing. It empties your
Yeah.
rage bar and does no damage.
There's also the secondary part where you get fewer overpowered procs due to using fewer globals on rage spending abilities.
Yeah.
So sure, you spend twice the amount of rage that a slam is supposed to spend, but you don't get twice as many of these procs.
If
So
look
you
at your
lose
damage
the free
breakdown
damage.
in Mythic Plus, like if you look at your damage breakdown, even if you feel like you're spamming Whirlwind like constantly, it does no damage.
Yeah,
it's
it's
all the way
like-
at the bottom.
It's like 5 to 8% of your damage. You're like, wow, this did nothing. Slam did more.
Like at
Yeah, you
that
just
point, I'd rather take like
Warbreaker
Sweeping
based
Strike
on-
and just like execute spam with like collateral
Yeah.
damage or whatever. Like if it's there, depending on dungeons. But yikes.
Yeah, you basically just burst AoE with Warbreaker based Storm, and then you sort of sweeping strikes and just single target, main target down,
Yeah,
and
finish
just
targets
ignore
off.
AoE.
Yeah, you can finish off targets with execute, especially with Massacre.
So it's
Right, should we move on to Fury talents then?
Yeah, I feel
Yeah,
like none
ours
of the other
was
talents are
fun.
really worth talking about. Dreadnought's just kind of there.
I gotta say that Fury at least feels like you have choices.
Feels like
With
there's a lot
arms.
of sick talents.
Yeah. I don't. I guess we could just go down by row. So, row 15 row, I'm actually kind of happy with the changes that came out. Endless Rage doesn't feel like just the default single target choice now. It actually feels good instead of just being like, oh, well, there's no ads dying. I may as well just take Endless Rage. I really like what they've done with Endless Rage because it's basically just the helm baked into a talent. I think it's really good. Fresh Meat is no longer as big of a meme, although I don't think it'll be the best choice. I will be using it during leveling just because the extra healing is actually going to be pretty handy. And War Machine is War Machine. Take it when you're killing ads. I don't think that's anything that surprises anybody.
Rest in peace, Raging Haste.
Yeah, let's be real though. The old War Machine was just a ton of fun to play, but I think with the new Fury and all the haste that it
Would have
gets
been
through,
busted.
it would have been
100%
insane.
haste,
Like,
easy peasy.
absolutely insane. Oh yeah, I get why it's changed, but I will forever miss Legion War Machine.
Think everyone will.
Rip.
Row 45. So Inner Rage, Sudden Death, Furious Slash. I got to point out the loser of the row. It's got to be Inner Rage. Inner Rage just feels so underwhelming. Doesn't really feel great. I don't know, especially compared to Sudden Death, which is my favorite in the row. Getting the random executes in there feels good. It feels really fun to play. I don't know. It's a really satisfying talent to play. Right now, most players are simming really close between Sudden Death and Furious Slash. I think that's going to change at 120 with Furious Slash probably pulling ahead for most players. And again, I know there was a lot of hate for Furious Slash and Legion because, man, I hated it too. But I think what it does now is a lot more fun than pressing that button in Legion because now it generates rage, and now it can enrage you. Does it still enrage you? I don't remember anymore. I know it doesn't enrage you anymore,
No,
but it gives you the haste.
Meat Cleaver gives you the chance to enrage with
That's
Whirlwind.
right. That's right. Yeah. So Furious Slash gives you ridiculous amounts of haste, and it generates rage when you use it too. So it doesn't. It's not a satisfying animation, but it doesn't feel as bad to press.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I still think Sudden Death is probably the most fun talent in that row. The 60 row I think is a pretty cool thing to talk about, specifically Warpaint, because Warpaint is now functioning fairly differently. It does basically the same thing, but instead now Fury doesn't take extra damage when it's enraged, but Warpaint still kind of does the same thing. So instead of it kind of equaling out the bonus damage you would take during enrage, it's now just a flat DR while you're enraged. And I think that's really cool because that was something that really annoyed me as a Fury player throughout the expansion, especially when you're doing higher Mythic Plus, because you just can't enrage yourself. There's lots of times I'm sitting at the last boss of Black Rick Hold, and all I'm doing is pressing Furious Slash because I can't enrage myself.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with how they changed that. 75 tier between Carnage, Massacre, and Frothing. I think Carnage and Frothing are both great, and really it's just going to come down to how things are tuned. Carnage is just ridiculous right now because it synergizes with the tier that we're wearing plus legendaries. So you're rampaging basically every other global during recklessness. It's pretty nutty. I think Frothing's got a lot of potential to provide the extra burst that people are going to be wanting to find. But again, I think that's really just going to come down to tuning and how tiers play out and what happens to the spec at 120. The 90 row is another really underwhelming row for me in general. There's no talent that I like on that row. It's our AoE row between Meat Cleaver, Dragon Roar, and Bladestorm. Meat Cleaver is the obvious loser, I'd say. Doesn't really do a lot.
Yeah, it's kinda
I
passive,
thought it'd be cool, like I mean it's decent in sustained AoE, but it's still not that great. Dragon Roar is the one pulling ahead right now because it's much easier to use. You don't have to worry about the whole duration of it fitting in Bladestorm because it's just one global. And then Bladestorm, it has its obvious problems. It looks really funny on Fury now because it's so fast. I don't know. It doesn't even look like it thematically fits, but neither does Dragon Roar. I don't know. I don't like any of the talents in that row. I don't think any of them are very fun to play. I don't think any of them add really anything fun to the spec at all.
Yeah.
And then the last row, Reckless Abandon, Anger Management, Siegebreaker. I think all of them are good. I don't particularly like Siegebreaker that much, although it can cleave, so it gives the bonus damage from the talent onto everything it cleaves onto, which can really line you up for some good burst AoE if you can get it set up. Anger Management is great because you get more recklessness, and being in recklessness feels fun. And then Reckless Abandon just makes your recklessness feel better.
Yeah.
So I think all of those rows that entire row is pretty fun to play. Any talent setup feels good, and again, it's just really going to come down to tuning to what we end up playing.
Yeah, the 100 row for Fury seems way more interesting than the Arms one, to be honest with you.
I'll be fair. Every row is more interesting than the Arms one.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun abilities, right?
Yeah. Like just looking at the 100 row, you have 3 options. It will depend on tuning, of course, which one is the best. But just looking at them thematically, all of them have the potential to be really good.
How Siegebreaker is basically, well, I think it was a better Claw Smash at one point before they changed it. Yeah, I felt kind of bad,
Yeah, it was odd. It was OP at that point, but it's still good now. There's no question about 15% extra damage is exceptionally good for the second cooldown.
Yeah, it just feels kind of like Arms and Fury share a lot of abilities. In Siegebreakers, they just a reskin Claw Smash, so it kind of just feels like, are your unique abilities gone? Because now Fury has it.
Yeah. I agree with that too. I feel like they're really blurring the line between some of the class identity or spec identity. Sorry, not class identity. But I don't know. I personally just Siegebreaker for me. I don't enjoy it as a talent. I don't like playing with it because to set it up to use it to its best potential is just annoying because you need to make sure that you have enough for a rampage before. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think the talent is just really weird to play and it makes it feel clunky. As opposed to RA, which just makes your recklessnesses feel smoother and better, or Anger Management, which just gives you more recklessnesses. Yeah, that's a mouthful.
I think it's thematically it's a good design talent. It just doesn't fit Fury as it currently stands.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
What
like
if
the
we
entire
do like the old Siegebreaker, like in HFC, that was just like a cooldown and like a super hard hitting ability?
And it knocked people back. That's the best part. Playing Iraqi base, just punch some idiot off the lumber mills. Yeah.
Knock them back 3 yards and knock them down. That's the best part. You don't stun them, you just knock them down. It's just useless knockdowns.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah.
But
We forgot one thing about BFA though, like one big thing. GCD change.
Oh yeah.
God, when those GC changes came out and Fury was not reworked, oh boy.
The
That
sky
was
was
experience.
falling in the Discord. My God.
Especially that one GIF, that cursed GIF. If you were pressing every single
Avatar,
cooldown.
Let me plus Bloodbath. Let me plus Recklessness. All right, we're ready to do damage.
Oh, yeah.
And the target step.
Like, oh, what a mess.
Yeah,
but you know, since the rework, it honestly hasn't been that bad because really you have your one offensive GCD, which is Recklessness, and you have your one kind of defensive utility cooldown that's on the GCD, which is Rallying Cry.
Yeah,
and that's basically it. Right, that's all you really have to put up with. You don't have to put up with stacking 3 buffs anymore to be able to do damage. It's just charge in, pop Recklessness, wait that 1 second, go ham.
Yeah. The charge being on GC kind of sucks. I mean, it's 0.5, right? So it's not the worst thing ever.
Yeah,
The
it's
Heroic Leap
yeah.
was on
very
the
short one.
GCD. The Heroic Leap was on the GC for a little bit there. That was awful.
Yeah, I'm glad that got removed. I think that did not belong at all.
Yeah. And Arms feels like it's not really affected by it at all because
The only major one is Sweeping Strikes.
Yeah, Sweeping Strikes, yeah. Claw Smasher and GC. Sweeping Strikes feels bad. Avatar doesn't feel that bad because at least
Because
it
no one
generates
uses
rage.
it.
Yeah, no one uses it. And Deadly Comp's off the GCD. It's one of the few cooldowns that's not on it.
CS is on the GCD, but it does great damage. So
Yeah, it does a lot of damage.
Yeah, and it's always been on the GCD, so it has history. As a
And I mean, I think it feels satisfying when you press a button and you feel like you've done something. And even so, like Fury still kind of has that problem where you press Recklessness and you're like, I just spent the whole second shouting at the enemy, like. Okay. But, you know, it feels satisfying after you do that because you feel so much stronger. But I agree, it feels cooler playing Arms and you press your major CD and it does the damage and then you just proceed.
Yeah. I also think it's a question of getting used to it.
When
it's just one GCD where you feel like you do nothing, you get used to it.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it's on a 90-second cooldown now, and maybe like a minute with anger management. It's not like you're pressing it as often as you did in Legion, where it was like down to 30, maybe 25 seconds because of COF. Yeah. Right now it's much more spaced out, so it doesn't feel as annoying.
Yeah, and it's only that one spell, and you can plan around it. And then it's Rallying Cry, which most of the time you know when you're going to use it.
Yeah,
like
it's always
when the massive areas. Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. It is still annoying to have on the GCD because there are sometimes those fights where there's never really an assigned place to do it, but you just realize it needs to be pressed. So that might get annoying in the raid, but I mean, I haven't really experienced that yet personally. So I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I think as long as you're planning it out anyways, it's not really going to be a big deal.
Yeah, and then you have to question yourself: would you rather have a raid cooldown on the GCD or have no raid cooldown at all?
Yeah.
Which most other specs don't have. So I would rather have Rallying Cry on the GCD than not have a Rallying Cry at all.
I mean, that's one GCD makes me lose damage. Come on.
Yeah. I need my parse, dude.
You telling me I have to hit Rallying Cry and Colossus Smash if it's clutch? Come on. You asked me to do this to save the raid. Oh my god.
It's almost as bad as defensive stance having a 6-second cooldown.
Bring back no cooldown defensive stance. Switch in and out as you please.
Yeah, give us back MOP stances.
Oh yeah.
Those were the days.
Yeah. I still feel like the worst part of GC change release for Warriors Sweeping Strikes because it's just ugh.
Yeah, it feels really clunky. Like it's just weird. Especially when you're like, oh, I gotta pop Avatar, I gotta pop Sweeping Strikes. It's just really weird.
Yeah, like I'm glad it's not a total passive anymore, so you kind of like don't have to put any thinking to it. You kind of just position yourself and go. But it also just feels bad because you pop it, your slouch set, you just kind of just sit there and like, nice, I'm sitting here, what's up?
Yeah.
I have to say that Sweeping Strikes is the only spell which I'm not happy about currently when it comes to the GCD.
Yeah.
Other than that, they have fixed most of them. Charge is no longer on the long GCD Heroic Strike. Yeah, not Heroic Leap, I mean. It's fixed.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else that GCD-wise feels bad.
Yeah, I'm sure most of us have read Artunius's rants on Twitter. And there's definitely some inconsistencies between what's on the GCD and what's not for some classes. And I know, again, we've talked about, every class can't feel the same, but it is weird how, like things like Shadow Step aren't on the GCD at all, but Charge has its 0.5, and they're basically the same spell.
I'll take the GCD on Sweeping Strikes over like the old one that was passive, even if it was 3 target, because now you can have like 2 targets almost like 10 yards apart, and if you stand in between them, you're gonna cleave both, like no problem.
Yeah, that's how
I have everything stacked up on top of each other.
You actually have a range. And then on Avatar, Sweeping Strikes like the bug out half the time if you tap the wrong target. It was like he tapped the Avatar, didn't cleave off properly. I don't remember. It was pretty dumb. But now actually it's both targets.
Consumed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but we switched from one really annoying thing to another really annoying thing. True. So optimally, we would have it off the GCD and the long range it has now, rather than having to choose one of the bad things.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's still minor. It's one of those we'll get used to it. Sure, it doesn't feel that good, but it's just a matter of practice.
Yeah, it's a big change to the game overall because we're so used to how fast paced everything is, so everything's slowing down a little bit. It'll take a little bit of getting used to.
When they just first implemented it, it felt terrible because everything was in the GCD, right? And then they fixed some things, took some things off, some have half GCD. They fixed it to make it more bearable because everything on GCD would have been terrible.
I don't know how much I would have had fun with that.
No, I don't think anyone would have.
We can go back to vanilla and having recklessness on like a 1 hour CD and not resetting wipe. That'd be great, right?
Oh yeah, shared cooldown with shield wall and retaliation.
Oh yeah, that's the worst.
Good old retaliation.
Yeah, they had
Best
that weird
spell ever.
They had that weird time in BC where Arms had Death Wish and Fury had Sleeping Strikes. It was kind of weird.
Good times.
Yeah.
Tables have turned.
When Fury popped all cooldowns and took 40% more damage.
Oh yeah, dude, that's the best. But
really good.
We're gonna take a quick 5-minute break, boys. Stick around. We're gonna be back very shortly, and yeah, we'll see when we get back. So let's talk about how arms, how easy it is to play. We kind of talked about earlier how everything is just kind of like on cooldown, right? Don't have to worry about range. You can't just hit things on cooldown and shit like that.
Yeah, arms is face roll. There's not much else to say. Basically, you're just depending on spec, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we got too many abilities that spice up the rotation either, right? There's a lot of abilities return and move to talents and stuff like that.
Yeah, like there's only really one talent which changes the way you play, and that's random. And Skull Splitter, but you always take Skull Splitter, so I'm not taking that into account currently.
I mean, that's just you just hit on GCD.
Yeah, like
hit on GCD, hit on cooldown, it's just kind of there.
Yeah, like priority one if you have Rend is just keep Rend up always. That's the only thing you have to think about when you have that talent. Other than that, you just Skull Splitter when you don't rage cap from it, Closer Smash on cooldown, Molar Strike on cooldown, Overpower on cooldown, and fill with Slam.
Yeah,
that's your normal rotation.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of complexity in general from specs is just gone, right?
Yeah, arms is
arms is one of the biggest offenders of it.
Yeah, arms has no depth currently.
Yeah, it's not like Legion. Sorry. It's not like Legion where you did have some complexity, the easiest part, hit cost smash for your Moral Strike execute, and then execute you want to hit Moral Strike with only 2 stacks execute precision and shared defenses, and I think that's like the most in-depth part about arms was the execute phase, and then that's kind of gone without the trait.
Yeah, and you also had procs to play around.
Yeah, the procs to play around, right? Sure, it was really easy to do, but added some depth to it. Like you can't just hit Moral Strike over and over again and be good DPS.
And it felt good when you had the Closer Smash proc. Whereas now in BFA, when you get an OP proc, fine, it's free damage, but it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, it just buffs your next, Moral Strike. We don't even hit that. We don't even hit Overpower over Moral Strike. We just keep Moral Strike on cooldown and keep the runes up.
Overpower is like a focus rage that does damage and doesn't cost anything. It's great, dude.
Or like, or it's like it's just a shatter defenses too, right? You just take lost smash, remove the debuff from it, and keep shatter defenses there.
Yeah, it's a worse version of all of those things we just mentioned.
Yeah, it's just a worse version. Sure, it feels nice to get a lot of procs and it feels smooth, but it's just like, wow, this is woo.
Yeah, it just feels global.
Very imbalanced, where like tons of procs give you so much damage. Like having your main source of damage, having a chance to reset was just busted.
Oh yeah. Wasn't really
now is
like, good.
Okay, you get like OP procs, which buffs your damage of Motor Strikes a bit, and the OP damage by itself is not like overwhelming or anything. It's just like it's okay.
It's not overpowering.
Ooh, got him.
Get out.
Funny. Real comedian. But yeah, arms has basically no depth when it comes to how to play or how to optimize your playstyle. You just press whichever button deals the most damage. And then if you have nothing to press, you press slam. That's basically it until you hit 35% or 20%, depending on talents. Yeah. And when you hit that, it gets even easier.
You move some buttons in rotation.
Yeah, you still keep Rend up. You still press Skull Splitter when you need to rage, or rather when you won't rage cap from it. You still press Closer Smash on cooldown.
Yeah.
And then you just spam Overpower because it's free, and spam Execute. You just ignore Molar Strike.
Yeah, but
good fun.
I feel like Fury actually has Fury's not the most in-depth spec, but it feels like much more depth than Arms has currently, right? You're actually constantly looking at your GCD and stuff. Furyslouch, take it away.
I think the right now, like I said earlier, there's not really a lot of nuance to Fury at the moment, but that's really because you can't mess up Fury at the moment. And I think a lot of that has to do with the legendaries bringing your rage generation so high that you can basically have 100%, near 100% uptime on most raid fights. So you're not really playing around in rage because you don't need to. You're just always in a rage. I think when we hit 120 and we simmer down on the rage generation back to around the 60% that Blizzard's saying we're going to get, I think then we'll see a little bit more nuance in the class about using your cooldowns properly within Enrage, which again is not complicated. It's not like, it's not going to take a lot of brain power to realize, I'm not enraged, I shouldn't press this button. But I think it does add a little bit more flavor to the class, where you want to make sure you're using your best abilities when you're enraged and building to the enraged so you can use them. Right now, if you look at Fury's priority list, it looks like this gigantic list of things, and they're so convoluted because it says do this when enraged, do this when not enraged, but then this when enraged. But really, it just kind of plays itself when you think about it, because you want to. The priority obviously is getting enraged, which you have two methods for, which is Bloodthirst and Rampage. So Rampage is the one you want to build up to, which you're always doing. You're always building up to a Rampage. And then you have Bloodthirst, which just has a flat % chance to give you Enrage. So as long as you're focusing on making sure those two abilities are being used properly, you basically can't mess up Fury. It's a very simple spec. I think the Azerite traits too don't really do anything for Fury. I think the one trait we've mentioned between the two specs that really changes things up is Executioner's Precision. We don't really have anything like that. Fury's got some pretty boring traits overall, but I think we'll get to that in just a sec. But overall, the rotation feels really good. And I think the one thing that I'm really impressed that they did is how they changed Execute altogether. Because before in Legion, Execute and Rampage used to compete with each other, which meant that you lost half of your Enrage gaining abilities. Right? You only had Bloodthirst. So now all of a sudden, in a lot of cases in the expansion, you had a really hard time getting enraged during your execute phase, and obviously being enraged is everything for the class. So I think by changing execute to generate rage and have a cooldown instead really improves the execute phase a lot. It doesn't quite have that huge damage spike that you see in Legion that Fury had because of Juggernaut, but I think it really makes the class feel better. Execute working together to accomplish the same goal as you were doing before 20%, after 20% now, it just feels good because now you're not competing against the rest of your rotation just to do the better damage spell. Now you're still doing the same thing, but it just works in tandem with each other. I think it feels really good to play.
It's one thing I'm jealous from Fury is that like their execute like enhances the rotation and speeds it up like when you enter execute, whereas arms, unless you have like EP traits, is just like execute, OP, execute. It's just like super boring and there's like nothing to it.
Yep, I think Fury actually feels more fun when you reach 20%.
Right.
Like if you compare arms and Fury just flows better when you reach 20%. Everything just execute doesn't hit like a nuke anymore, but it just generates rage faster, which means you get rampage faster, which means you have more enrage uptime, which means everything just flows faster, making the rotation and spec more fun. Whereas for arms, it really just doesn't do anything.
Let's just say that like arms has the numbers, Fury has the gameplay. Like that's it.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like the traits for pretty much a lot of DPS specs, what I've been told, have been pretty just passive. Like Fury is like all passive, right? Like nothing actually changes your rotation. Well, arms has like executioner's precision, but that's pretty much it, right? All of them are just like there just to add a bit of damage.
And don't forget that if you have like the slam trait, you're going to be slamming in execute.
Yeah,
really bad.
I mean, that changes a little bit. I feel like executioner's precision is definitely like the ones that actually changes your rotation quite a bit, right?
Yeah. Also, Rip Fury.
Fury, yeah. Fury's got all passive ones, yeah.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. Nothing actually like you don't play around those traits. You can't just like okay, woohoo, extra damage. But like if you go to arms, you get crushing assault, melee abilities increase the damage of your next slam by X amount of damage and makes it free basically, right? It doesn't work with Fervor Battle, which kind of sucks, increasing the damage to the slam, but you wouldn't really want to do that anyways because you would be spending rage instead of having a free slam. And then, Execute's Precision, just talked about it. Make sure Moral Strike hit harder on the target that took execute damage. Works with Sleeping Strikes, super awesome. Lord of War, Warbreaker, Claw Smash do more damage and generate more rage. I like this one a little bit just because it, adds more rage and feels pretty fun.
I think it's trash.
Wow.
You're using
comparably to others, it actually. doesn't.
You're using Bladestorm 1 out of 2 CS, so you don't really need
That's-
rage. You're gonna be capped anyways.
That's
So
true. But
You can
might
play
be able
around.
not. Yeah, but you also might not be able to take a Skull Splitter. You actually take a what's it called, Sudden Death, maybe. But
I won't do that.
yeah, I don't know. I feel like it was better when we didn't know when we were gonna use Bladestorm and Colossus Smash. But then now, like, they buffed the rage gen a bit. They added a bit more damage to the abilities. It doesn't feel as doesn't feel as good as I first thought it was when it first came out.
Well, yeah, if I gotta say though that ARMS have more interesting S-Ray traits than Fury. I don't think anyone will disagree with that. Like, we have 2 that change the rotation noticeably, and then we have a few that at least are interesting. Like Executioner's Precision will mean you use Smaller Strike in the execute phase, which is quite a big change. And then we have Crushing Assault, which just means you will have basically a free slam randomly. Or unless I'm misunderstanding, yeah, it's a random proc. So you just wait for the proc and use it. It's basically sudden death, but slam, which is interesting.
It procs quite often too. So it's not like, oh, you get like 3 procs in a 3-minute pull. It actually
it's
procs
not like anything
often.
like let's say Ayala's where you get like 1 proc every minute. It's much more often.
Yeah, it comes up often. You're like, oh, nice, free slam. It feels good, right?
Yeah. It's actually a really fun trait to play with from the little bit I played ARBs on the beta.
Yeah.
It's just having that extra rage available to just fill in the globals is I don't know, because I come from Fury. I want to fill my global. Having that ability to do that on ARMS with free slams really feels good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the worst ARMS traits is really Gathering Storm. Like, especially when it was OP a few months back when it one-shot people. That was fun. But other than that, Bladestorm just deals slightly more damage, and the speed doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, either it's really good or it's useless.
Yeah, it has to be like, I just got buffed the other day, so I don't know the value off the top of my head. But it's either gonna be, like I say, it's gonna be like really good, or it's gonna be just kind of there. It's like the helmet, right? We only ran it because we ran, so much Bladestorm anyways, and gloves would have been kind of useless.
It's also like the only trait that affects AoE, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, you get Seismic Wave, right?
Yikes.
Yeah, I haven't got that one yet.
Overpower on AoE. Woohoo!
Well, it's free.
When you're rage starved all the time, you hit a whirlwind, right? Whoop-de-doo. Has anyone actually gotten that? Because I haven't gotten that one yet. I feel like it feels terrible. Yeah.
It looks cool on paper, but I don't know how that would play.
We have to remember that Whirlwind doesn't know damage.
Yeah.
So we will use Overpower on AoE simply because we don't do AoE. So it's free damage, basically. Which is AoE for flavor.
Hey, yeah, it's okay. It just doesn't feel like it's actually impactful.
Yeah, I would think about it kind of like if you remember how Slam worked back in Siege of Orgrimmar, where it had a 2-yard splash.
Yeah.
Most of the time it didn't do anything, but sometimes it was just free damage.
Yeah.
It's flavor, basically.
Yeah. That's how I feel about Test of Might too, right? When Class Smash expires, your strength is increased by X amount for every 10 rage you spent. Although it kind of sucks because you're not always constantly spending rage in Class Smash because you are Bladestorming. At least for one of the Class Smashes every, cycle, right? One of them you'll be spending rage, the other one you won't be spending as much rage because you have Bladestorm.
I haven't tested it, but did any of you test if that plus Deadly Calm work together?
I actually don't know. Someone asked that in ARMS the other day, and I couldn't tell them the answer.
It does. Someone mentioned that it doesn't and asked if it was a bug, so I'm just going to assume that it doesn't.
Yeah, because if they work together, it might enable us to use Deadly Calm sometimes, because Deadly Calm plus AM would mean you have Deadly Calm for every second closest match, basically.
Yeah.
So that could be interesting.
I just wish they kind of reversed it, whereas you get like X amount of strength when you CS, and it goes down over time until like your CS expires. Maybe that'd be interesting.
It would make closest smash better, but I think their main plan is to make us change our playstyle slightly. basically forcing us to pool rage for Furyslouch. Whereas currently we just spend rage as fast as we can.
Yeah.
To maximize our anger management benefit.
Yeah, pull the rage for claw smash, spend it all, then use your hard hitting abilities and the huge strength buff if it's high enough.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's just how much strength we'll get at the end of it. How much of a DPS increase will it be? Is it 10% extra strength or is it 2% extra strength?
Yeah.
It all comes down to tuning, of course. So it's hard to tell right now how good it will be. It's either going to be really good if it's a lot of strength, or it's going to be something we just don't care about.
Yeah.
Which is how all the traits work, basically.
Let's move on to the worst traits in the game. Fury Warrior, Slouch. How do you feel about those horrible traits and totally not changing your game at all? Speaking of which,
I'm actually going to skip the first trait that we see for just a second because I think there's something kind of weird that might have happened there. So we'll go to the second trait, Infinite Fury. So when Recklessness expires, critical strike is increased for 5 seconds. Your auto attacks will refresh the duration of this effect. I haven't got to play around with this one yet. I don't know if you could just basically keep the buff up until your next Recklessness. I doubt that's the intent. Again, though, not very exciting. I mean, you get more crit, but Fury doesn't have cool interaction with crit. It doesn't make you do anything cool, so you're just doing more damage. So, not very exciting. Pulverizing Blows might be one of the only traits that could potentially shake things up with Fury, but again, I very, very highly doubt it. Raging Blow causes every strike of your next rampage to deal additional damage, and it stacks up to 5 times. But that would mean you would probably have to end up delaying a rampage and potentially capping rage to do that, to get the maximum benefit of that, and I highly doubt that's going to be worth it. So I don't think you're going to play around the 5 stacks.
So there's like no point really stacking it.
I think so. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's really something you're ever going to play around.
I think the only reason why it has a max cap is so you don't just stack it for 2 minutes and then insta kill something.
And then just use one ridiculous rampage. Yeah.
But then again,
it makes sense.
Why just stack it all in that case? Why not just one stack and get it over with?
Yeah.
It's odd.
So the next one is the one I think we're going to be wearing for the entire expansion. Auto attacks deal 5 additional damage and reduce the cooldown of Recklessness. So I don't actually think this trait's going to be that great because Recklessness isn't as big a damage cooldown as compared to Battlecry and Legion. Again, from what I understand, Reckless Fury does stack multiple traits, so you can get a fair amount of cooldown reduction on your Recklessness. And again, having your major cooldown come up more often is not that bad. But again, I don't see it as that great. This trait did just get buffed last night though, and the additional auto attack damage got quite a big bump up. And Fury already has really high auto attack damage, so I think it might end up being a good trait, but I just don't see the reduced cooldown of Reckless as being like such a big deal, especially compared to like what COF did for us in Legion. Simmering Rage is kind of budget pants. Rampage deals additional damage and generates 1 rage per strike. This trait stacks too, from my understanding. Again, it's basically just pants. It's nothing too exciting, nothing crazy. It's still not as good as how pants worked. But I mean, extra rage for any reason on Fury will always be good. So I think this will be a really good trait. But again, it's just not exciting. Trample the Weak. Rampaging an enemy whose health percentage is lower than yours increases your strength and stamina by 19. This may as well just say rampaging an enemy gives you more strength and stamina. Because again, it's not exciting. It gives you a little bit more damage just for doing your rotation. So Blood Craze is a really weird trait because I remember it coming out, when we first saw the Azerite traits, but Fury hadn't been reworked yet. So I got a feeling because Bloodthirst used to enrage you through critical strikes on its ability, and since it doesn't do that anymore, I feel like they designed this trait with that in mind to help you get enraged more often, and then just never bothered to change it because it's like, okay, well, whatever. And now it's just more damage. So I don't know. Like you look through all of these different Azerite traits that Fury has, and none of them really look that fun. None of them really shake up your gameplay. None of them really improve the play style a lot. Except maybe like Simmering Rage, giving you more rage per strike, and I guess reduced recklessness. But even then, it's not a lot. It's not going to be as ridiculous as using the pants during battle cry in Legion. It's a very budget. It's basically budget pants. Yeah, it's not quite as exciting.
Yeah. Speaking about Infinite Fury though, right? When Reckless expires, critical strikes increased. That probably has some kind of DR. Like it'll extend for quite a while, then eventually just fall off. I know Arms had something kind of the same way where there was a glyph back in WoD. Whenever you mortal strike to increase the duration of die by the sword. I remember Sarri talked about this one day where Arms Warriors were tanking Tyre and Valhari because they were able just to mortal strike over and over again and 100% parry the boss the entire time. So yeah, it definitely probably just has some DR after X amount of auto attack that stops increasing. But other than that, I don't see anything else with that trait.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, you're gonna want to get some of these. It's not like you're ignoring the Azerite traits because they're all boring. Like, they're still gonna improve your DPS. They're still gonna make your character stronger. It's just, in terms of gameplay and design, I'm not thoroughly impressed, and I'm not particularly excited about them. I'm just gonna slap them on, click the button, and forget about it.
Yeah, they don't really replace tier stats. It's just like woohoo, right? It feels like a trait on the artifact weapon.
Yeah, exactly.
And since we talked about everything, we're going to move on to our Twitter questions. The first one comes from Bashando. He asks, what can the average Arms or Fury Warrior do to become better than the average warrior? Any specific add-ons I should be getting? Well, I think the biggest thing in general is that you should look at Warcraft logs. Look at what you're doing. Sure, you might get a 95th percentile, but looking at what you did wrong and further improve on that is the best part.
I agree. I think using the resources that are available to you are just like it'll change your gameplay completely. Yeah. Right? Like coming into the Discord, going into those pins, and literally just reading it for a little while. It'll make a big difference in your gameplay for sure. And if you just take the time to read over them, and there's a lot of people in the Discord who are more than happy to look at logs too, right? Even if you don't quite understand how to look at it yourself, bring it to people, right? And just be like, yo, I don't know what to do. I need to know what to do to improve. And even if you are parsing well, like Corejo said, just there's always room for improvement. Everybody makes mistakes. And so accepting that and realizing that, what can I always be doing better and working on it is definitely the biggest step in my opinion.
Yes, except if you get rank 1, you're the best. You don't have to improve on anything.
Wow, thanks.
Obviously.
Yeah.
It also depends on how you count an average warrior. Is an average warrior someone who does heroic and gets blue parses, or is it someone who does mythic and get 95% percentiles?
Yeah, that's also true.
Like if you're doing heroic or just starting mythic rates, you really should focus mainly on how to improve your raid awareness and how to make sure that you optimize the amount of uptime you have on the boss, optimize the amount of not dying, etc., etc. The rotation should be something that at least basic rotation.
But basically read my mind, Sarri. Like as one goes with the other.
Yeah.
Like I feel like, especially with our easy arms where it's just mortal strike on cooldown. You have 3 GCDs between each mortal strike, and you just press overpower when it lights up. If you're so natural with your rotation, and you can just do it and have great awareness and just look around where you have to be ahead of time, and just really be good at mechanics at the same time, because that they're gonna come out ahead of time. You're gonna be good. Period.
Your best knowledge.
Damage, you're gonna have great uptime, and you won't die like an idiot because you're focusing so hard on doing damage, and you forgot oh, this AoE's coming up, I have to dodge it.
And there's also a question of, is it farm or is it progress?
Yeah.
If it's farm, you most likely will focus more on parsing. Let's be frank, on farm, all we care about is getting rank 1.
Oh, yeah.
So you will try harder to pad, to be polite.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're on progress, you really shouldn't care about your damage. Damage is secondary. damage doesn't matter at all until you hit the rage.
Yeah, then it becomes an issue. Your knowledge of the fight is going to go farther than actually knowing every single situation of how to do your rotation.
Exactly. So if you have to choose between running away from the boss for 10 seconds and surviving, or not doing it and have a 50-50 to die,
stay until the very last.
Play it safe.
Yeah.
Always play it safe at the beginning of progress.
Yeah.
Once you get used to the fights, you can try to be more smart, so to speak, with how you utilize your movement. But until you get to the point where you're sure about how well you can play on a fight, just play it safe.
Yeah.
Just one more thing I do want to add on to that is that I started Warrior myself pretty late into the expansion, like basically start of TOS, like near the end of Nighthold. And what really helped me push along farther and really just get better at Warrior really quick was spending a lot of time on the practice dummy. And I mean, obviously you don't get execute on the practice dummy, and that's an issue for Warriors. But getting down the rotation and understanding, the muscle memory before you even get into a fight, so it's not really something you need to be thinking about. It really helps you a lot, because now all you have to focus on, like Sari and everybody was saying, is the mechanic. You know how to survive, and you know how to play the class. You know how to do as much damage as you can. Now you just need to know how to survive and keep doing that damage.
You also have to remember that different people learn things differently. For example, if I use myself as an example, I don't really learn a lot by hitting the target dummy. I don't feel like it's a useful way to spend my time. If I want to learn my rotation, I just jump into LFR or a Mythic Plus or something and do an actual encounter. And then if I want to experiment, I jump into Simcraft and plug in the numbers there and say, is this an optimal playstyle? And then if it's an upgrade compared to what I'm doing, I'll try to copy what I'm writing in Simcraft.
Not everyone is like able to play around in Simcraft and like.
Yeah, of course, that's what I'm using myself as an example. That's how I learn.
That's like the next level, right? Not a lot of people can do that.
Yeah, I can use a small tip that if you want to learn the absolute optimal rotation, just look at how Simcraft is put up.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's optimized, at least arms, because I'm doing it and I like arms.
I'm doing it, so it has to be right.
Sometimes I may not update it because I don't want arms to look as good as it actually is and get it nerfed, but that's secondary.
Secret, dog.
Yeah, that's top secret. You don't say such thing on stream. What the hell, dude?
But
I'm not playing currently, so I don't care.
But the next question comes from Ralmonti102, and he asks, it seems like as if this X pack would be more alt-friendly. Do you think players will utilize both specs depending on the fight, or is one spec stronger than the other?
I mean, that's really just going to come down to the encounter itself, right? Like how does the toolkit work on that fight, right? It's like, is arms cooldown up exactly when you need it on that fight, or is Furies, right? And that's just the most basic of examples. But really, and you raise a good point that it is more alt friendly. So if it does swap it, let's say in Uldir, Cahoon is better for arms, but Mother's better for Fury. Just an example, right? You have that freedom, and all you really need to do is go back to the transmog guy or whatever and re-roll your Azerite trade.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is kind of an inconvenience, but it's not as bad as, I just don't have the legendaries. I just can't play it.
Yeah, it's kind of the same as when we had to go to the class trainer and change our talents.
Oh,
yeah.
And I feel like one thing is that HSC, I think it was the last example where you played both specs. Sure, arms was a bit more dominant, but you did play Fury for those AoE heavy fights.
Like Storm, you played Fury.
Yeah, exactly. If you press Bladestorm, you played Fury. But I feel like Legion was kind of weird, where one spec was absolutely stomping the other in every situation, right?
Yeah. I think between tier to tier, that's what we saw too.
Yeah, ABT was the closest thing we got.
Yeah.
To like both specs being like, you go for this fight, but Fury was still just better in general.
I also think that for BFA, that Warriors are really lucky when it comes to swapping specs. Like the stats prior for both arms and Fury is basically the same.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Haste and crit. We both want two handers, so the only downside is that Fury needs two of them, but that isn't a big deal most of the time because offhand damage isn't as important as it used to be. So
like 50% of your main end, so it's not that big of a deal.
yeah, so we can really easily reroll. There's no real downside to optimizing which spec you play depending on the fight. Whereas I can honestly say I don't know the stat priors for different specs other than the warrior ones, but I would assume, for example, that the rogue specs doesn't all have the same stat prior, or the, say, elemental enhancement, they would need a intellect weapon and agility weapons, so that's harder to reroll. But warriors, we have the same, as I said, same stat prior and same weapons, so reroll to your heart's content.
Oh yeah. So going to our third question, Fog Seth asks, what are your thoughts on the current state of Execute and its CD for Fury Warrior?
Archie has actually talked about this a fair bit in the Discord, and I very much agree with him. Is that I think Execute CD is a little bit long. It is reduced by haste, of course, but it goes down to 4 seconds. It just doesn't feel like the same button you would press previously, where you like, oh, I could start hitting that execute button, I can start really pumping the damage. Now you're kind of hitting it sparingly. I feel, and it is not necessarily just a damage thing, but it does come into play. The fact that you're hitting execute much less often means that execute isn't as high on your damage as it would be. But it's also because hitting execute frequently feels good, because it's that big hitting ability. It feels satisfying to hit. You're smacking the enemy, you're finishing him off, and you don't quite get that satisfaction as often on Fury as you used to. But I still overall, when I look at Fury's execute phase now, I find it much better than in Legions, until the Soul of the Battle Lord came. But that's kind of a whole other issue, because now it doesn't compete against the rotation, it works with it. So overall, I'm still happy with it, but I do wish it still had a slightly lower cooldown.
If we swap to arms for like pressing execute, it does feel satisfying because you're spending tons of rage. And of course, it comes with like a bit of downside with like the MTGCD, depending on like your Azerite traits with like Slam. But I think a 2-stack Mortal Strike in CS, like at 110 right now, it's for about like, I think 8,000 with my gear. And execute crits for about 10,000. So I don't know. It's like pretty satisfying to press it. Like it does a big chunk of damage plus the deep wounds.
Yeah, the only downside for the arms one is that you don't really press anything other than execute.
Yeah, that's the worst part. You're kind of just back to like the WAD playstyle, kind of just like hit execute over and over again.
Yeah, the only reason why you press any other button is because either it's free with overpower, it's closest match, which increases damage you do, or it's Skull Splitter or whatever it's called, which gives you rage. So yeah, you don't even use Mortal Strike when you have 2 stacks of overpower, simply because the damage per rage of Mortal Strike is worse than execute.
Yeah. I feel like deep wounds kind of sucks in execute because you're just constantly hitting, just constantly refreshing, right? Just kind of
exactly.
It feels like ignite and it just doesn't ignite. It's just like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Get more mastery.
More mastery, of course. Yeah, just get 1,000% mastery, dude. Then they'll do damage.
I'm not really. But I got to say that if you compare how good it feels to go into the execute phase between arms and Fury, I much prefer the Fury one.
Oh yeah,
like way more the only downside it has is it's a slightly too long cooldown.
Yeah,
which comes down to flavor. Basically, I prefer if it would have the same cooldown as God First, just so you can do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 rotation. But that's just flavor.
Oh yeah.
Whereas arms, you just execute, spam execute, nothing else.
But moving on to our fourth question, we have Art3Boy who asks, do you think that haste overcome crit later in the X-Pack? What about mastery? I'm assuming he means for Fury, but I guess we could talk about arms as well about this question.
So let me reread that question.
Yeah. I feel like they're both kind of even for both specs, right? I think Fury might favor haste a bit more, just because more globals, faster attacks, etc. I think arms might favor crit a bit more because just heavy hits, right, and deep wounds. That's how I feel, but I'm not totally sure yet.
everything I've seen this far puts them at exact same value.
Yeah, they're so close, right?
It's so close it doesn't make a difference.
Oh yeah. And Mastery for Fury just seems good, but it's not like Arms Master where it's totally underwhelming and garbage. It's just kind of there. And since Mastery doesn't increase the damage of like trinkets and like on-use damage stuff like that anymore, it just doesn't feel like as powerful as it used to be. So it's definitely gonna be weaker.
Yeah, it's definitely gone down a little bit in value. It's not the superior stat by far. And similar to Arms as well. The stats are all looking pretty close. Except for Mastery with you guys, but but I think that's really just coming down to what Blizzard's philosophy wanted to be with this expansion, is that they want eye level to be king again, and they want you don't have to decide between the 25 eye level upgrade or the better stats. It's very clear cut what you should be wearing,
unless it's Mastery.
Yeah, unless it's Mastery. But I do think it's a little bit of a flip around that crit's so good now for Fury, and it kind of makes sense. But at the same time, it doesn't. I don't know. It's like I feel like if crit is going to be a good stat, it should have some kind of interactivity with the class. Like, oh, if this crit, something happens. But we don't have that. So having crit being such a good stat, it just doesn't add anything to the gameplay. It just feels kind of dull. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, overall, I think it really we're just going to be wearing the highest eye level, and you're really just aiming for haste. I think haste is still going to be king. You just want haste, just as you've always had on Fury. You just want that haste because you want to be able to spam your abilities faster.
Right.
I'm still going to wear Mastery pieces just because of strength. Like, I don't think getting a bit of Mastery and losing Ace is going to compensate for like losing strength just because of like a few eye level. You're still going to wear like a Mastery piece because of a strength gain, guaranteed.
I'm almost certain that you would prefer an agility piece with haste crit over a strength one with Mastery.
Oof.
Wow.
Going back to what's it called? Wrath. We just stack armor bin. Where's some agility red armor bin?
Mastery is quite useless.
Mark these words from a theory crafter.
Oh.
Maybe not armor pieces because you get that extra 5% strength if you use only. But say a weapon, sure, agility doesn't do anything, but Mastery doesn't do anything either.
Sure.
But there's also the secondary part of asking, is crit and haste good, or is it just that
it's just not the worst?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think that crit is any better now than it was in Legion. It's just a matter of the other stats are as bad now. And you can see that when you look at the primary stats. Like, strength, it has the same value now, basically, as it had in Legion. But strength is better, like 50% better than any secondary stats.
Well, yeah, and it's just like, I don't know. I feel like just crit got better for Warriors and Jump because Battlecry was gone for 2 of the 3 specs.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's the only reason why crit got better. Nothing actually interacts with the spec, as Slouch said. It's just Battlecry's gone. So it's just
good riddance.
Yeah, good riddance.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't like that.
No. I don't
Why was it called Battle Shout also? Why wasn't it Recklessness? It didn't make any sense.
Yeah, why they changed it back to, from Recklessness, I have no idea. But moving into our last Twitter question comes from Andamarak, and it says, what is one change to each spec you want to make?
Heroic Strike.
Heroic Strike, back for both specs.
For every spec in the game. Just remove every spell, just add Heroic Strike.
I'll be fine with that gameplay.
The dream.
Yeah, I mean, on the serious side, I hope they fix Arms deep wound scaling somehow. There are lots of ways you can go about how to fix Mastery as a stat, but we have to wait until Blizzard actually does it. And it's also the other question of how soon they're going to do it, or are they even going to do it? Hopefully they do it, but we don't know. We might just say screw it, right?
Yeah.
Let's remove the obvious of Mastery. What else would you change about Arms?
I would really like to see Colossus Smash changed. I don't like it having a 45-second cooldown. It doesn't feel like a cooldown to me. it just feels like a rotational spell with a really long cooldown. Like, I would be fine if they had Avatar, for example, as our main spell, main cooldown. It's only 30% damage increase, if I recall correctly, which is the same as Colossus Smash, but it feels like a cooldown. Whereas Colossus Smash, or just, it feels odd to have it as our main cooldown.
Yeah, I mean, Avatar is 20%, but like you said, it feels like a cooldown, right?
Yeah.
You get bigger, you get, do a lot of damage for 20 seconds instead of 10 seconds, I think Colossus Smash is now.
Yeah.
It's just
Yep.
It's just like,
and it's
man,
a buff rather
yeah.
than a debuff.
And if you're playing, playing arms and you got a Colossus Smash and you don't have Warbreaker and Colossus Smash gets parried, well, goodbye. See ya.
I mean, did they change like CS being parried? Because I don't think I've had CS parry like.
I don't. Yeah,
one
I haven't
time.
seen either. I've had it miss on like high level targets. That's pretty much all I've had.
I just use Warbreaker, so I don't see parries.
Yeah, I only run Cloud damage like a couple fights in Taurus, like dogs, and I think that's really it actually.
I haven't used Warbreaker like on bosses, and I've never gotten parried ever. So I think it's basically immune to getting parried. So
that's really nice actually.
But
yeah, that would be frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, happy to in Legion where your first Claw Smash gets parried, like hell yeah, dude.
Good
It's
call.
a good call.
Yeah,
Especially on fights
I
where you
still
had
get
to stand in
good
front. Good fun.
Yeah.
What if they added like mastery scaling a little bit to Colossus Smash again, but like not to crazy levels like Legion? I think it could give some like value to mastery. Like who knows?
Yeah, I think the mastery is just wrong. Like deep wounds, as it currently stands, is not a good mastery design-wise, if you ask me. Like if they want deep wounds, they could have just had the old version where if you crit, you got deep wounds, and then you can have mastery increase the percentage of the crits or something like that.
Yeah.
Or they could just have deep wounds be a baseline part of Maul Strike or something like that, and have opportunity strikes or Colossus Smash scaling or something from mastery.
Yeah.
It just feels like we have the wrong mastery.
Yeah, just have like deep wounds where like a percent of whatever damage you just did, like from Mortal Strikes or Execute or Blightstorm.
See, that's not how it was gonna work. Like the harder Execute was or harder Mortal Strike was, the bigger dot that was. But
because you can hit Mortal Strike for 1 damage or 1,000,000 damage. Deep wounds is still the same damage.
Yeah. It feels kind of it's just there, right? Constant damage.
What about Fury? One change for Fury.
It's a tough one because I'm really happy with the way Fury plays. Juggernaut. No, God, no, please no. That's one of the things I'm very happy is gone. Let's be real. But I still have the complaints about how I feel Fury's burst AoE rotation feels, and I think one of the easier fixes for it would be to have Siegebreaker maybe enrage you on its use. I don't know. I'm no expert on balance. I don't know how much that would throw things off, but making it easier to get enraged by using Siegebreaker would make it a much smoother talent and really smooth out how the AoE rotation would play. The burst AoE rotation at least. Because right now you have to prep so much before you can use Siegebreaker that maybe if you're pushing some Mythic Plus, the pack might even die before you get ready if it's a low enough key. So it gets really kind of awkward to use that kind of cooldown in that situation. So I think just having it enrage you when you use it, so you can just run in Whirlwind, Siegebreaker, Bladestorm, or Dragon Roar, right? It makes it so much easier to just quickly fire off the rotation you need, and then you can just continue whatever rotation you need to be doing. Other than that, we just talked about Execute having a lower cooldown. I feel like if that was the case, it would make the Execute phase even more fun than it already is. Plus, it would feel like the damage spike that it should because, it's Execute. Other than that, no, I'm really happy with how Fury is playing right now.
I think a lot of people feel that way. There's only like the minor things that aren't massive, except for the AoE thing you mentioned.
There's one thing I'd change.
What are you gonna change?
What I didn't like about Fury, like before, is Battlecry being such a big chunk of your damage and doing basically nothing in between.
Mm-hmm.
And Juggernaut, both of these are just gone. Your damage is like much more sustained. The rotation is smoother. So I wouldn't change much, but Bladestorm, I don't know. Like I feel like it should be natural that in one enrage window, you can fit your AoE ability like Bladestorm. Like it doesn't make sense that like maybe a few of your ticks at the end aren't enraged. Like maybe it'd be busted, but bring back like Berserker Rage enraging you again. So you can
Yeah.
move Macro Body together, you Bladestorm, and like there's your like AoE burst.
Or you could have Bladestorm and Dragon Roar act as if you're enraged.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do
that would
stuff
be
like
good.
that.
Yeah.
Like the old Dragon Roar used to ignore armor.
Yeah.
So it has precedence, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because the easy
work
solution
differently.
would be like to make enrage window longer, but you'd make the spec like a bit busted overall if you did
Yeah,
that.
it would
Mhm.
change too much if you ask
You
me.
just need to emphasis Bladestorm like by itself.
And they did compress Bladestorm, but I think that brought about other issues too, mostly design wise. But like namely how stupid Fury looks Bladestorming.
It feels like a whirlwind.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
feels like a
it's
whirlwind.
done so fast, right?
Yeah.
You can't even tell that you Bladestormed.
Yeah.
And Bladestorm to me, like I mean, I haven't been a Warrior player long, but when I look at Bladestorm, that's an arms ability. That's not a Fury ability to me. And I know that's not always been the case, you know, in the past. Fury used Bladestorm and very frequently. But when I look at it now, it makes sense for as an arms ability, but I don't quite see it as a Fury ability. I don't feel like it fits the theme either. And same with Dragon Roar, and that's a big reason I don't like that tier at all. Is because none of those abilities really feel like a furious berserker, right? It doesn't feel like it fits the theme of the class either, right? It'd be cool to have an ability where you actually look like you're just unleashing, you're going nuts, you're going berserk, but none of them really feel that way.
Bring back
Yeah.
Owen's Fury.
What?
Bring back Owen's Fury, dude.
Yeah, bring back Owen's Fury.
Solve all the little problems.
Please.
Nah, do out of soul. You just like go up, you become dark and screech like a retard and do tons of damage. Fury fantasy in a nutshell.
All right. So we move on to our Twitch questions that we got over the period of these this little podcast. So we'll start with the first one from Titania. He asks how we feel about Arm's Fury losing Shockwave as a talent. It used to be a must-have talent for High Mythic Plus and for ad management. Does this make us less survival for Mythic Plus class choice, and what do we bring to make up for it? I know we talked about this earlier, but I feel like a lot of the specs did lose their stuns and utility as well. So it's not, the biggest deal that we lost it. But as we said earlier too, we also have Stormbolt, which if we do need a stun, it's there.
Yeah, I think I said this earlier too, that a lot of mobs just can't be stunned in Mythic Plus now. And they, like, from what I've played too, they've done a really interesting thing with Mythic Plus now, where trash isn't just about, oh hey, he's casting this thing stun, and that's the whole mechanic. Now there's actual things you have to be paying attention to. There's mechanics you have to follow properly, and it feels like the trash are basically mini bosses, right? There's actually things you got to pay attention to. It's not just stun this, survive, move on. It's actually tactical. So I don't think the loss of Shockwave is that big a deal. And of course, having an AoE stun for those mobs that can be stunned is handy, and you can bring the classes you want for that in your comp. But I don't think you need it, and I don't think it's going to hurt us that bad.
It's also a question of, are you doing a +5, a +10, or a +30?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
For the absolute highest level, it will hurt us, no question about it. Like an AoE CC, even if most targets are immune to CC, is always useful.
Mm-hmm.
But then
Even
it
if
also
it's for
comes
that
down.
one pack in the mob in the dungeon, right? If it's a really tough pack, not having the AoE stun can really screw you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but then it also comes down to the simple answer. It comes down to tuning. Like arms in TOT was OP, but without any changes whatsoever, it was nigh useless in the last patch. So even if we would have all the utility in the game, if we can't do enough damage or have enough survivability to justify our spot, we're not going to get used in High Mythic Plus or in MDI or some such things.
Oh, yeah.
But then again, if we have damage, the fact that we don't have Shockwave anymore won't be as big of a deal.
Oh,
so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it plays out, really.
Yeah, if we look at arms, we still have the burst AoE, which historically have been the most important thing. And we also have that burst AoE whilst having a optimal single target rotation, talent-wise.
Death is the best form of CC.
Amen.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Especially ours.
Yep. So
and real quick, just, ARMS has been performing extremely well on the beta in Mythic Plus.
Yeah.
And it is being ranked as one of the highest melee DPS you can bring. Again, I haven't really played arms in Mythic Plus yet because I've been dicking around on Fury and kind of getting the hang of that. But from what I've seen, and especially because of its versatile toolkit, like it brings a lot of things to the table in terms of damage for Mythic Plus. And really, that's why you're going to be bringing a Warriors is for the big Dannies.
Yeah, big Dannies.
You can still summon like a big priority target for 1 GCD. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that bad.
Right.
It's a 4-second G. It's a 4-second duration, 20-second
It depends
cooldown.
like
I
on
think
the
it is.
threatening
range
enemies
sounds
are in a pack.
Yeah. Yeah. But we'll move on to our next question. Volgan asks if the arms traits are currently significant enough to deviate from Infinite Killer Anger Management build, for example, Execution Precision favoring Sudden Death or Seismic Waves synergizing with Dreadnought. After the recent buffs yesterday, I can see
Short
it.
answer, no. Long answer, not really, no. The cookie cutter spec for arms is simply the best way to go at the moment.
Yeah.
Sure, you could argue that Executioner's Precision will increase the value of Sudden Death, but Skull Splitter is really strong currently. And War Machine on an optimal fight is always going to be good. Like I can be honest and say I haven't simmed it out yet, so
Yeah.
tuning is still a question.
Yeah,
but
the only thing I can say for myself is that it might make Execution Precision being better might make Massacre a bit better. But other than that, like that's the only argument I can really make. SD is too inconsistent to anything meaningful.
Yeah, Massacre is already the best talent at 120.
Okay.
So,
Thank God.
Yeah, and there's also the question if you get 3 traits of Executioner's Precision, is that gonna change something? And the short, I don't know. It's the easy answer I can give you. It's something that we will need to figure out before I can give a definitive answer.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it will change anything.
I mean, maybe if Sudden Death procced as often as like Fury does, but currently it doesn't proc that much. Like, it's like okay because it's an execute, but even with like EP traits, would it be enough? Like, if you cast maybe like 5 execute before the actual execute phase to be like worth changing talents? I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, and you have to remember that if you have Sudden Death, you will get fewer executes, sub 20% or 25% if you have Massacre.
Yeah, and Skull Splitter is also like a filler in execute phase to funnel for more executes.
Exactly. So
yeah,
it could be good. I doubt it.
Right.
And if you look, which was the other trait that he mentioned?
Seismic Wave.
Seismic Wave.
I think the short answer is like, even if you talent into Dreadnought, you have 2 stacks of Overpower, sure, but you don't end up casting that much more Overpower through a fight, because like if it lights up, you press it.
Yeah,
The only
exactly.
thing that does is you can like set up for bigger Moto Strikes going into CS.
Yeah, and you're not casting CS as often, so it doesn't feel as good. Not casting Blaze somewhere as often. It just doesn't feel that impactful.
Yeah, and there's also the fact that anger management is really strong.
Oh yeah. So we're gonna move on to our next question. Nirsil asks, do you guys think Fury having RNG spells can make the class feel slow and frustrating at 20 with all that much haste? Bloodthirst RNG, Raging Blow RNG, Sudden Death RNG, and etc. So Slouch.
So I think once you hit 120, right off the bat, your legendaries are gone. Your stats are like way, way lower. You're gonna feel the hit. Like Fury slows down quite a bit, and there's no way to get around that. That's gonna be the truth. In terms of the RNG, we have noticed there's quite a bit more variance in Fury now, especially compared to what you see in previous tiers in Legion, where Fury really just did consistent damage, even though it had like it wasn't variance. It had burst, but there wasn't that much variance within it. But with Raging Blow resets, Bloodthirst only having the 30%, and you can't buff it, and Sudden Death procs, like you said, there's a fair bit of variance that can happen in there. I don't think it'll be frustrating though.
No.
I think it'll still play fine. And variance isn't necessarily a bad thing in the game. Having those polls where everything's procking and things are going well, like it feels good, but it only feels good if you have those polls where it doesn't. And I think that's fine. I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily at all. Fury's still going to be GCD locked. Fury's still going to be, spamming abilities. All of its abilities do feel okay to hit, feel fine to press, right? And I think at the end of the day, it's still the Fury that you love and like playing, but it just has more reactionary abilities that you have to adjust to now.
Yeah, and there's also a question of frustrating RNG and RNG that enhances the spec. Like for Fury currently, no matter what happens, you will fill every global. Like if you have the worst RNG you can ever have, you will still press Blood First and cooldown. You will still press Radiant Blow and cooldown. And if you don't press those, you press either Wild Slash or Whirlwind.
Yeah,
but
you still have an ability to press.
Yeah, exactly. But if you have bad luck, but if you have good luck, you just press buttons that deals slightly more damage and generates slightly more rage, which feels good when it procs, but it doesn't feel bad when it doesn't.
Yeah.
If we compare that to the RNG of arms in Legion, that was very frustrating RNG. If you got a lot of procs, it felt good. If you got a normal amount of procs, it felt decent. But if you got bad luck, you just sat there doing nothing for 20 seconds, just crying your eyes out.
Oh yeah.
I still have nightmares about pressing execute 20 times in a row and never getting a reset.
Yeah, feels good.
Yeah. So moving to our next question again. Titania asked another question. Now that Reckless no longer provides 100% crit chance, will on-use trinkets be less desired? Since Recklessness does actually increase, critical strike chance in general, just increase the crit strike chance of your abilities only now. They kind of got rid of that interaction in general, right? Like nothing increases trinket damage.
But the only thing we can increase trinket damage with is Verse.
Yeah.
Because they took out Battle Cry affecting trinkets. So even if it's 100 or 1%, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The Mastery, like CS, doesn't increase damage from trinkets anymore.
I think it does.
Fury Mastery doesn't anymore, so...
CS might, but...
Yeah, CS does.
Okay, yeah, so it's definitely not going to be as impactful, right? It's not going to be, your range raw souls, because you can add a bunch of damage modifiers and make it do a shit ton of damage.
And then there's the question of unused trinkets such as Drought of Souls or unused trinkets such as Scabbard, which increases your strength.
Yeah.
If you unused increase your mastery by 500, let's say, that is still really good with Recklessness, because Recklessness is still a very good cooldown, simply because you press Rampage very often. So increasing the amount of damage you deal with Rampage by increasing your mastery or haste or whatever within unused trinket, it's still going to be really good.
Yeah.
But if the unused is deal 500 damage over 5 seconds, it won't matter if you have Recklessness up or not, because Recklessness doesn't impact that damage.
Yeah. And from what I've seen from a lot of trinkets in BFA so far, we don't really see a lot of trinkets like that. It's a lot like what Sari said, you press this trinket or your strength has gone up or your mastery has gone up, right? And those things, obviously do benefit from using with Recklessness. But yeah, things like Umbral Moonglades or Drought of Souls are not as impactful anymore, because it's not scaling with your mastery or with Recklessness anymore. It's not about providing that big burst during that small window. And so like now, if you're running a Mythic Plus, right, you just pop the Moonglaze. And
we have.
You're in effect, just pop it. And that's fine, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that.
Yeah, we've been kind of spoiled with having Battle Cry increases trinket damage, so we think that is a normal thing, but every other spec in the game maybe had a, say, 30% cooldown for the trinket.
Yeah.
So we're going to go back to the normal stance.
Warrior was definitely, I think, the biggest abuser for unused trinkets in the game.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because of the damage. But moving on to the next question, Dark Rays asks, what was the best arms playstyle and why was it Focus Rage?
I'll be frank. I think Focus Rage was better than Rend. When it comes to playstyle, I really did not like the Rend playstyle.
No, I didn't like TOS playstyle too much either. It just felt kind of boring.
And then you also have to think, do you mean Focus Rage as in the one we had in ABT, or the one we had in Emerald Nightmare?
I think AE is more referring to ENTOV, where you basically just use Focus Rage 90% of the time. Yeah,
and if you had gloves back then, I would say it was a really fun spec. If you didn't have gloves, it was not a fun spec.
I had ring and it was all right. Right? It's still kind of fast, but definitely like when I had gloves on PTR, it's like, wow, this is actually just a world difference.
Yeah.
It's just actually insane how good it was.
It felt really good to play as well. Yeah, remember that.
Oh yeah. And Delo FR Master. Wireless Focus Rage, the best
I mean,
play
I
style.
think I am extremely biased when it comes to Focus Rage
I am too.
because I got gloves as my very first legendary in EN,
Oh, you.
but I still feel like I like Focus Rage because you kind of have like to make a decision. Like, are you like dumping rage into Focus Rage or slams or I don't know. You add like some thoughts behind it, even if sometimes it was just like every single GCD you spam FR, like sure.
Yeah.
But even in TOS, when it was not like a spam fiesta, it felt like so satisfying to press cooldowns on cleave.
Oh yeah.
Just such big numbers. It was like insane. I just loved
KJ
it.
was awesome for that. Just popping those ads with Ravager and just slammed that fucking ad into oblivion.
Yeah, because even if we forget like the busted EN version with gloves where you just like spam nonstop, I still like to play style on cleave in TOS, even if it was not like as spammy as it was. But just overall, like playing arms and being GCD locked and just like always having just like, I don't know, just big chunks of damage was so satisfying.
Yeah. I feel like ABT and TOS Focus Rage is a bit more fun for me because you weren't just spamming it like a degenerate. Just when you had gloves.
I just
don't forget those big damages on Kingaroth there.
Hell yeah.
I think it also comes down to why I don't like the 30% version is that I didn't play high-end arms during this time. If I were to play and try to optimize in every fight, I think I would learn to enjoy it on the fights where it's good.
Yeah.
But seeing as it's only good on one fight, I never really learned to enjoy it.
Oh yeah.
It's very much a higher thinking talent than any other option.
Big brain, 200 IQ.
Yeah, big brain.
Well, more like you need more than 10 IQ to play with it.
Yeah.
Ian was brainless, but TOS on cleave was
it wasn't the worst, but it quite a bit of thought.
Yeah.
So moving to our last question, Brath here asks if Fury has the niche now to bring it over other melee specs right now. Other than 3 to 4 target cleaved, it doesn't really excel at anything. If the answer is no, do you expect the same change as the expansion goes? What about arms?
Fury's trash right a bit up. Bye.
So like we said, Fury does more sustained damage now. It's not the burst. And there's lots of situations where burst is very desirable, especially on ad fights. But sustained single target DPS or even AoE is never really a bad thing. Right? If you're able to constantly pump out the damage throughout the entire course of a fight, it's not really something to look down on either. Right? It doesn't have the burst maybe when it needs it, but it has the damage that it always needs throughout the fight.
Yeah, and it also has sustained AoE.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Which arms doesn't have.
Yeah. And that is definitely the niche. So if you want to look at the AoE, right, you can consistently AoE for forever, really, if you wanted to. And that is something that arms doesn't have the luxury of having, for sure.
Yeah, Fury can do full single target damage whilst doing full AoE damage at the same time, which is either gonna be useless on a lot of fights, or it's going to be really good on that one fight where you sustain AoE.
So many fights where you just had like constant sustain AoE. Like, it's so rare. I mean, it's like some kind of buff for sure.
And then you have to question on how many targets does that sustained AoE become better than the burst cleave that arms has.
Oh, I don't expect it to be better than Fury at everything as it stands. Like there's going to be some tuning for sure.
Yeah, it's a question of tuning, which currently it's hard to tell. But if you ignore the numbers, in theory, arms has better burst AoE, and we have better 2-target cleave. But Fury has more sustained AoE on X amount of targets. I don't know how many targets mid-cleaver cleaves did. But as long as you have that amount of targets for a long time, it's going to be good. But then again, that scenario doesn't happen too often.
Yeah, exactly.
The other upside that Fury has above arms is that Fury has better burst. Recklessness as a cooldown is better than Close to Smash. So if you need burst for a fight, you're gonna want to be Fury. Whereas if you want sustain, you want to be arms. But still, it's not good burst. You have to remember both Fury and arms has very low burst. So if it's a burst fight, you're most likely going to be banished if it's hard burst.
You're not gonna definitely not have the burst we have in Legion for specs in general.
Yeah.
That's been tuned down quite a bit.
Oh yeah, I think that's across the board in general.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They want to remove AOE because I feel like in Legion, too many specs were good at AOE and cleave. I think that's why they didn't do a cleave fight because they were scared of basically in general, right? Because you can see docs where people pull insane numbers, like 3 or 4 mil is ridiculous.
Yeah, we still lose to boomkins and shadow bursts.
Oh yeah,
Good fun.
But that's all the Twitch questions they have. So we're gonna wrap up the show, boys and girls. Finally, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in all the great stuff. Don't forget to follow the channel, follow our Twitter, all the good stuff. The next Prot show or next Skyhold Talks is gonna be for Prot. That's gonna be next Saturday, August 11th. Check that out before BFA drops. You follow my Twitter, Corejo Wow. You can follow my Twitch, Corejo Wow, and my YouTube, Corejo. If you guys want to plug in your stuff, now's the time.
So my webcam's not here, but I'm waving. I don't know why I'm doing that. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Furyslouch. You can follow me on Twitch at SlouchClown with a K. And then you can always talk to me on Discord. I'm there basically all the time.
You can follow me on Warcraft logs because I don't have a Twitter, a Facebook, or anything, or a Twitch.
Just look at rank 1s, dude.
And there you go.
I'd plug my guild sort of, but I just joined recently, like not even 2 weeks ago. So yeah.
There you go.
Gotta post a trial.
Anywhere.
Oh yeah, I was supposed to plug mine too. Shout out to Decidedly Uncouth.
Yeah, shout out to Guildless Corejo. Looking for a guild, by the way. Hit me up.
Legendary Guild Leaping Shoulders.
Hell yeah.
I guess it's my time to plug. You can find me at basically everything at Warriorsarri. So it's Twitter/Warriorsarri, Twitch/Warriorsarri, Discord, whatever, Warriorsarri. And as most of you know, I've been AFK for the past year. I plan to come back playing hardcore at some point when I can get a new computer. Hopefully that's a month or 2 away at most. So when I get back, I'll get back to streaming, get back to doing things because I'm currently slacking way too much. But yeah, that's my plugs. Yeah. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Every computer GoFundMe when.
GoFundMe for sorry.
Yeah, if you want to give me a computer, I'll give you thanks.
There you go.
It's a good trade.
Just give it a thanks.
Yeah, a PayPal/Warriorsarri.
There you go. And again, that's it for today, guys. Remember, next Saturday, protection. Check that out if you want to. But Protection Warrior, woohoo, fun spec.
You
don't forget to follow. Yeah, don't forget to follow Skyhold on all social media and stuff to find out guest information and all the cool stuff that's happening. But again, guys, that's it for the stream, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.